I've been driving trucks for 14 years, long enough to understand the difference between feeling bad and just being tired, long enough to trust my instincts when something feels wrong, long enough to know when to keep going and when to pull over. That January night, my instincts were quiet. Just after 5 in the evening, I picked up my load in Milwaukee. 42,000 pounds of industrial paper rolls to be delivered to a printing plant outside Des Moines. Standard load, standard route. I-94 west to I-90, then I-35 into Iowa. Roads I'd driven hundreds of times, roads I could navigate half asleep if I had to. That was good because I was tired. Not dangerously tired, just the normal fatigue this job brings. The kind we're used to. The weather report said clear skies, temperatures dropping into the low 20s overnight. No precipitation, light winds out of the northwest. Perfect winter driving conditions. Cold enough that the roads stay solid and predictable. Not so cold that your fuel gels or your airlines freeze. I'd left the truck idling while they loaded me up, and the cab was warm when I climbed back in. My coffee was still hot in the cup holder. I pulled out of the warehouse yard at 5:47 p.m. I remember because I logged it in my book, like always. Estimated arrival time was 1:30 a.m. if I kept a steady pace and didn't hit any delays. 7.5 hours of driving, give or take. I'd done longer runs on less sleep. The sun had already set by the time I merged onto I-94. That time of year, darkness comes early in Wisconsin. The sky was that deep blue-black color it gets right after sunset, before true night settles in. My headlights cut through it easily. Traffic was light. A few cars heading home from work, another semi about a quarter mile ahead of me, nothing unusual. The road was dry, the lanes were clear, and my rig felt good under me. Responsive. Solid. I settled into the drive, letting my mind go quiet the way it does on long hauls. This is what people who don't drive trucks don't understand. It's not about staying alert every single second. That'll burn you out in a week. It's about finding that zone where you're aware but not tense, where your body knows what to do and your mind can drift a little. Not daydreaming exactly. More like existing in the present without thinking too hard about it. The other semi ahead of me took the exit for Madison. I watched his taillights disappear down the ramp, and then I was alone. Just me and the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. The radio was playing something country, low enough that I could barely make out the words. I wasn't really listening to it. It was just background noise, something to fill the silence. Around 7 o'clock, I crossed into Minnesota. The landscape didn't change much. Still flat farmland stretching out on both sides of the highway, broken up by the occasional cluster of lights marking a town. The sky was fully dark now, moonless. Just stars and the glow of my headlights on the pavement ahead. That's when I noticed the temperature gauge. It was dropping faster than I expected. When I'd started out, it had been 26 degrees. Now it was reading 19, and I'd only been driving for an hour and a half. I frowned at it, then checked the external thermometer mounted on my mirror. 18 degrees, still dropping. I turned up the radio a notch, not because I wanted to hear the music, but because I wanted to hear the weather updates when they came on. The song ended, and the DJ came on, talking about some concert coming up in Minneapolis. I waited. Finally, he mentioned the weather. Clear skies, cold front moving through, temperatures expected to drop into the teens overnight. Advisories for black ice on bridges and overpasses. Black ice. Every trucker's nightmare. It's not really black, of course. It's just a thin layer of ice on the road that's so clear you can't see it. The asphalt shows through, so it looks like the road is just wet or even dry. You don't know it's there until your wheels hit it, and suddenly you've got no traction at all. No control. 40 tons of truck and cargo sliding across the pavement like a hockey puck, and there's nothing you can do but hold on and pray. I've seen it happen. Hell, I've felt it happen. That sickening moment when your steering wheel goes loose in your hands and the truck stops responding to your input. Usually, it only lasts a second or two before your tires find purchase again, but those seconds feel like hours. And if you're on a bridge or a curve or anywhere near another vehicle. I shook my head, pushing the thought away. The roads were dry, I'd been checking, and the temperature would have to drop below freezing for black ice to form, which meant I checked the gauge again. 16 degrees now. Damn. I eased off the accelerator a little, letting my speed drop from 65 to 60. Not much, but enough to give me a little more reaction time if something went wrong. I was still making good time. I'd hit the Minnesota-Iowa border around 9:30. Then it was straight shot down I-35 to Des Moines. The highway stretched out ahead of me, empty and dark. I hadn't seen another vehicle in 20 minutes. The only signs of civilization were the occasional farmhouse lights in the distance. Tiny pinpricks of yellow against the blackness. Everything else was just darkness and road. My coffee was cold now, but I drank it anyway. The bitterness helped me focus. I checked my mirrors out of habit. Nothing behind me, nothing beside me. Just empty lanes and darkness. The white lines on the road flickered past in my peripheral vision, hypnotic and steady. Around 8:15, I passed through Austin, Minnesota, or rather, I passed by it. The town was off to my right, a cluster of lights and buildings that I could barely see from the highway. I didn't stop, didn't need fuel, didn't need food, didn't need to stretch my legs. I was in that zone now, that comfortable rhythm where the miles just melt away and you're not really thinking about anything except the road directly in front of you. The temperature kept dropping. 14 degrees, 13, 12. I turned the heat up a notch, even though the cab was already warm. Something about that number made me uneasy. 12 degrees was cold. Cold enough for ice. Cold enough for problems. But the road was still dry. I could see it clearly in my headlights. Dark gray asphalt, clean and clear. No shine to it. No wetness, just good, solid pavement. The bridges I crossed looked fine too. I made a point of checking each one as I went over, looking for that telltale glisten that means ice. Nothing, just dry concrete. Still, I kept my speed at 60. Better safe than sorry. Around 9 o'clock I crossed into Iowa. The landscape didn't change. Still flat, still dark, still empty. But something felt different. I couldn't put my finger on it. The road felt, I don't know, just different. Not bad exactly, just not quite right. I checked my mirrors again. Nothing. I checked my gauges. Everything normal. Fuel was good, oil pressure was good, temperature was 11 degrees. I frowned. That was colder than the weather report had predicted. Not by much, but still. And it was still dropping. I watched the number for a minute, wondering if the sensor was glitching. But no, it ticked down to 10 degrees as I watched. The radio crackled with static for a moment, then cleared. A commercial for a furniture store in Des Moines. I turned it down again, listening to the sound of my engine instead. Steady and strong. Nothing wrong there. I passed a sign that said Des Moines was 83 miles away. Good. Another hour and change, and I'd be done. I'd unload, grab a few hours of sleep in my bunk, then head back to Milwaukee in the morning. Simple. Routine. Except nothing about that night was routine, even though it felt like it at the time. Around 9:30, I noticed something odd. There was a car behind me. Not unusual by itself. Cars passed me all the time, usually going faster than my 60 miles per hour. But this one wasn't passing. It was just sitting there, maybe a quarter mile back, matching my speed exactly. I watched it in my mirror for a while, trying to figure out what it was doing. The headlights were steady, not getting closer or farther away, just maintaining that exact distance. After a few minutes, I shrugged and looked away. Probably someone on cruise control, not paying attention. But 10 minutes later, the car was still there. Same distance, same speed. I tapped my brakes, just a light touch to make my taillights flash. Sometimes that's enough to make someone realize they're following too close, or to snap them out of whatever trance they're in. The car didn't react, just kept coming, steady as a metronome. Now I was getting annoyed. I sped up to 65, watching my mirror. The car sped up too, still that same quarter-mile distance. I slowed back down to 60. So did the car. What the hell? I muttered. I thought about pulling over, letting the car pass. But something stopped me. I didn't like the idea of stopping out here in the middle of nowhere with some weirdo following me. Better to just keep going, keep watching. If the car was still there when I got to Des Moines, I'd deal with it then. The temperature gauge read 9 degrees now. I started paying closer attention to the road surface, scanning ahead for any sign of ice. Still looked dry. But at 9 degrees, black ice was definitely possible. More than possible. Likely, especially on bridges and overpasses where the air circulates underneath and makes the surface colder than the surrounding road. I was coming up on a bridge now, a long one spanning what looked like a river valley. I eased off the gas even more, letting my speed drop to 55. The bridge approached in my headlights, the metal guardrails gleaming dully on either side. The road surface looked fine, dark and dry. My tires hummed across it, steady and true. No problems, no ice. But something felt wrong. I couldn't explain it. The truck was handling normally, the road was clear, the bridge was behind me now, and I was accelerating back up to 60. Everything was fine. But that feeling was still there, sitting in my chest like a cold stone. Something wasn't right. I checked my mirrors. The car was still behind me, still maintaining that exact same distance. I could see the headlights clearly now, 2 bright points in the darkness, unwavering and steady. "Come on," I said out loud. "Either pass me or back off." The car did neither. The radio crackled again, longer this time. I reached over and adjusted the tuning knob, trying to clear it up. The static got worse for a second, then resolved into a voice. The DJ from earlier, talking about the cold front. I caught the tail end of what he was saying, advising caution on bridges and overpasses tonight, especially after midnight when temperatures are expected to drop into the single digits. If you're out driving, take it slow and watch for ice. Single digits, great. I checked the temperature gauge, 8 degrees, still dropping. The thing about black ice is that it doesn't look like ice. It looks like nothing. It looks like road. You can be driving along, feeling perfectly safe, thinking everything's fine, and then suddenly your back end kicks out, or your front wheels won't respond to steering, and you realize too late that you're on ice. By then, there's nothing you can do except try to ride it out and hope you don't hit anything. I'd been lucky so far in my career. I'd felt black ice a few times, but I'd never actually lost control. I'd always managed to keep the truck straight and let it glide until I found traction again. But I knew drivers who hadn't been so lucky. I knew guys who'd jackknifed on bridges, who'd slid off the road into ditches, who'd hit other vehicles because they couldn't stop. I knew one guy who'd died that way. Black ice on an overpass, lost control, went over the side. 40 feet down onto the access road below. Didn't survive it. I didn't want to be that guy. So I kept my speed down and my attention up, scanning the road ahead for any sign of danger. The car behind me was still there, still following. I'd stopped caring about it. If it wanted to follow me all the way to Des Moines, fine, as long as it didn't do anything stupid. The miles rolled by. 60 to Des Moines, 50, 40. Around 10:15, I started seeing signs of civilization again. Lights in the distance, the glow of a town off to the east. Not Des Moines yet, just one of the smaller towns along I-35. I didn't know which one, I didn't care. I just wanted to get where I was going, unload this paper, and sleep. The temperature gauge read 7 degrees. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, tighter than they needed to be. I forced myself to relax, to loosen my grip. Tension makes you react wrong when something happens. You have to stay loose, stay ready. Another bridge was coming up. I could see it in my headlights. Not as long as the last one, but elevated about 30 feet above the terrain on either side. I checked my speed, 58 miles per hour. I let it drop to 55, then 50. The bridge approached. The road surface looked fine, dry and clean and safe. My truck's front wheels hit the bridge deck, and I felt it. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just a subtle change in the way the tires were gripping the road. A looseness, a sense that the truck was floating just a tiny bit, like there was a microscopic layer of something between the rubber and the pavement. Ice. I didn't brake. Braking on ice is the worst thing you can do. It locks up your wheels and turns you into a sled. I didn't accelerate either. I just maintained my speed and my steering, keeping the wheel straight, letting the truck glide across the bridge deck. It only lasted about 3 seconds. Then my tires found purchase again, and the truck settled back into its normal feel, solid and responsive. I was across the bridge, back on regular pavement, and everything was fine. But my heart was pounding. That was black ice, had to be. Nothing else would cause that feeling, that sensation of disconnection between the truck and the road. It was thin, barely there, but it was real. And if it was on that bridge, it would be on other bridges. Probably on the road surface too, in spots where the temperature dropped just right and the conditions were perfect. I'd have to be careful. Really careful. I checked my mirror. The car was still behind me, those 2 headlights steady and bright. Had it felt the ice too? It was hard to tell. It seemed to be maintaining its speed and distance, same as before. Maybe the driver hadn't even noticed. Or maybe they were just better at hiding their reaction than I was. The road stretched out ahead of me, dark and empty and cold. Somewhere in the distance I could see the glow of Des Moines on the horizon, a dome of light against the night sky. Still miles away, but getting closer. I focused on that glow, using it as a landmark, a goal. Get to Des Moines, unload, sleep, simple. But that feeling in my chest was still there. That sense that something wasn't right. I told myself it was just the ice, just the knowledge that the road was more dangerous than it looked, that I had to be extra careful. That's all it was. Nothing supernatural, nothing weird. Just weather and physics and the reality of winter driving. The temperature gauge read 6 degrees. I passed another exit, another cluster of lights marking a small town. The sign said Osceola. I'd never been there. Didn't know anything about it except that it existed. Just another dot on the map, another mile marker on my route. The lights fell away behind me, and then it was just darkness again. Around 10:45, I saw something that made me frown. There was a truck parked on the shoulder ahead, maybe half a mile up the road. I could see the running lights and the reflective tape on the trailer, bright in my headlights. It was facing the same direction I was going, like it had pulled over and stopped. As I got closer, I could see it was a refrigerated trailer, a reefer in trucker terms. The refrigeration unit on the front of the trailer was running. I could see the exhaust vapor rising from it, but there were no flashers on, no hazard lights, no flares, just a truck sitting on the shoulder in the middle of the night. I slowed down as I approached, trying to see into the cab. The windows were dark. I couldn't tell if anyone was inside. I thought about stopping to check if the driver needed help, but something made me keep going. Maybe it was that feeling in my chest. Maybe it was the car still following behind me. Maybe it was just the ice and the cold and the darkness making me paranoid. Whatever it was, I drove past the parked truck without stopping. I watched it in my mirror until it disappeared into the darkness behind me, and I felt a small stab of guilt. What if the driver was hurt? What if they needed help? But the truck was still running. The reefer unit was working. If something was seriously wrong, there would be signs, flashers, flares, an open door, something. The fact that everything looked normal, except for the truck being stopped in the middle of nowhere for no apparent reason, actually made it more unsettling. I shook my head and focused on the road ahead. Not my problem. I had my own issues to worry about. Like the black ice I knew was out there somewhere, waiting. The glow of Des Moines was closer now. Maybe 20 miles. Another half hour and I'd be at the printing facility, backing into a dock, shutting down my engine. Another half hour and this drive would be over. The temperature gauge read 5 degrees. 5 degrees. Jesus. That was colder than it had any right to be in January in Iowa. Not unheard of, but definitely on the extreme end. And with temperatures that low, black ice wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. Every bridge, every overpass, every shaded section of road would be a potential skating rink. I checked my speed, 48 miles per hour. I'd been slowing down without really thinking about it, my body responding to the danger even before my conscious mind fully processed it. Good. Better to be slow and safe than fast and dead. The road curved ahead, a long, gentle bend to the right. I followed it, keeping my steering smooth and gradual. No sudden movements. No jerking the wheel. Just a slow, steady turn. And that's when I felt it again. That looseness, that floating sensation. Except this time it was worse. This time, when I tried to straighten the wheel as I came out of the curve, the truck didn't respond. The wheel turned in my hands, but nothing happened. The truck just kept going in the same direction, sliding sideways across the road like it was on rails. Black ice. I eased off the gas completely, not touching the brakes, not fighting the slide. Just letting the truck do what it wanted to do, waiting for the tires to find traction again. My heart was hammering in my chest. The white line on the right side of the road was disappearing under my trailer. I was drifting toward the shoulder, toward the grass beyond it, and there was nothing I could do except wait and hope. Then the tires caught. I felt it like a physical jolt, the truck suddenly responding to my steering again, the back end straightening out, everything snapping back into alignment. I was back in my lane, back in control, and the truck was running straight and true like nothing had happened. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That was close, too close. Another few feet, and I would have been off the road, and at 48 miles per hour, with 42,000 pounds of weight, going off the road meant rolling. No question, I checked my mirrors. The car was still behind me. Had it seen what happened? It was hard to tell. It seemed to be maintaining its distance, same as before. Maybe it had hit the same patch of ice. Maybe it hadn't. Either way, it was still there. My hands were shaking. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to steady them. It didn't work. The adrenaline was coursing through my system now, making everything feel sharp and immediate and terrifying. I'd been driving trucks for 14 years. I'd driven through snowstorms and thunderstorms and fog so thick I couldn't see the hood of my truck. I'd driven through mountains and deserts and every type of terrain imaginable. I'd dealt with mechanical failures, with flat tires, with blown air hoses and overheated engines. I'd seen a lot, done a lot, survived a lot. But something about that night felt different. Something about the way the ice had grabbed my truck, the way it had taken control away from me so completely and so suddenly, had shaken me in a way I couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just the danger of it. It was the feeling of helplessness, the knowledge that for those few seconds I wasn't driving the truck anymore. The ice was, and the ice didn't care if I lived or died. The glow of Des Moines filled the sky ahead now. I could see individual lights instead of just a general dome. Buildings, streetlights, civilization, safety. I aimed for them like they were a beacon, something solid and real in a night that suddenly felt anything but. The temperature gauge read 4 degrees, 15 miles to Des Moines. 15 miles and I'd be done. I could do 15 miles, I could do this. The road ahead looked clear, dry, safe. But I knew better now. I knew that the road could look perfect and still be deadly. I knew that black ice didn't announce itself. It just waited, invisible and patient, until you hit it. I kept my speed down at 45. Slower than I wanted to go, slower than I needed to go, but fast enough to keep moving forward. The car behind me had closed the distance slightly, maybe down to 1/8 of a mile now. I wondered if the driver was getting impatient with my slow pace. I didn't care. Let them be impatient. Better that than dead. Another bridge was coming up. I could see the sign. Bridge ices before road. Like I needed the reminder. I slowed down even more, letting my speed drop to 40. The bridge approached in my headlights, the metal guardrails running along both sides. It was a long one, maybe a 1/4 mile from end to end, spanning what looked like a river or a lake. I couldn't tell in the darkness. My front wheels hit the bridge deck. Instantly, I felt it. The ice. It was everywhere, coating the entire surface of the bridge like a sheet of glass. My truck started sliding immediately, the back end kicking out to the left, the trailer beginning to swing around behind me. I didn't panic. I couldn't afford to panic. I steered into the slide, turning the wheel left to match the direction the back end was going, trying to keep everything in a straight line. The truck responded sluggishly, fighting me, wanting to jackknife. I eased off the steering, giving it less input, letting physics work instead of fighting against them. The trailer swung back the other way, overcorrecting. I turned the wheel right just a little, trying to catch it. Too much. The back end started sliding right now, and I was running out of bridge. The guardrail was coming up fast on my right side, and if I hit it at this angle, it would tear the trailer open like a can opener. I turned the wheel left again, more this time, really working it. The truck was sliding sideways now, almost perpendicular to the road. My trailer blocking both lanes. If another vehicle came along, they'd hit me broadside and we'd both die. But there was no other vehicle, just me and the ice and the darkness. And the car behind me. I caught a glimpse of it in my mirror. Those two headlights much closer now, maybe only 100 feet back. It should have been panicking, should have been braking hard, should have been trying to avoid the sliding truck in front of it. But it wasn't. It was just coming, steady and straight, like nothing was wrong. Then my tires found traction. I don't know how, don't know why. Maybe I'd reached the end of the ice patch. Maybe my tires had finally warmed up enough to bite. Whatever the reason, the truck suddenly straightened out, snapping back into alignment so fast I nearly overcorrected and sent myself into another slide. But I caught it, held it steady, and then I was off the bridge and back on regular pavement, and everything was solid again. I was breathing hard, sweating despite the cold. My hands hurt from gripping the steering wheel so tight. I checked my mirror. The car was still there, still following, like it had just driven across the bridge without any problems at all. like the ice hadn't even been there. "What the hell are you?" I whispered. The car didn't answer, just kept coming, those headlights unwavering and bright. 10 miles to Des Moines. 10 miles and I'd be done with this nightmare. The temperature gauge read 3 degrees. I realized I'd stopped looking at the road ahead and forced my attention back to it. Focus. Pay attention. Don't let yourself get distracted by that car or the ice or anything else. Just drive. Just get there. The road was straight now, running through flat farmland with nothing on either side except darkness. Good. No curves, no bridges, no surprises. Just straight, simple driving. I could handle that, except the road didn't feel right. I can't explain it better than that. The road just felt wrong. The truck was handling normally, the pavement looked fine. All my gauges were reading normal. But something was off. Something I couldn't put my finger on. Maybe it was just paranoia. Maybe after sliding on that bridge my nerves were shot and I was imagining problems where there weren't any. That made sense. That was logical. But logic didn't explain the feeling in my chest. The way my instincts were screaming at me that something was very, very wrong. I checked my mirrors compulsively now, every few seconds. The car was still there, still following, still maintaining that exact distance, like it was tethered to my truck by an invisible rope. 5 miles to Des Moines. I could see the outskirts of the city now, buildings, lights, roads leading off the highway. Signs for exits and services. The printing facility was on the south side, which meant I had to take I-35 through the city and out the other side. Another 15 minutes, maybe 20, at this speed. I could do 20 minutes, I could do this. The road curved slightly, bending around what looked like a shopping center on the right side. I followed the curve, keeping my speed steady at 45, watching for ice. The curve tightened. I slowed down to 40, then 35. Something about the angle felt wrong, like the curve was sharper than it should be, like I was going too fast even though I was barely moving. And then I felt it. The ice. But this time was different. This time, when the tires lost traction, they didn't find it again. The truck just kept sliding, kept gliding across the road like I was on a frozen pond. I turned the wheel. Nothing. I straightened the wheel, still nothing. The truck wasn't responding at all. It was just moving in whatever direction momentum was taking it, and momentum was taking it toward the shoulder, toward the grass, toward the ditch beyond. I tried pumping the brakes, just little taps, trying to scrub off some speed without locking up the wheels. It didn't work. If anything, I seemed to be going faster, picking up speed on the curve even though my foot wasn't on the accelerator. The shoulder was rushing up on my right side. I was going to hit it. I was going to leave the road. And at 42,000 pounds, leaving the road at any speed was catastrophic. I braced myself, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. And then, impossibly, the truck straightened out. The tires grabbed. The back end snapped into line. I was back in control, back in my lane, back on solid pavement. Like nothing had happened. I sat there, breathing hard, trying to understand what had just occurred. The truck had been sliding. I'd lost control. I'd been seconds away from rolling into a ditch. And then, what? What had happened? I checked my mirrors. The car was gone. I blinked, thinking I'd missed it somehow. I checked again, looking at all 3 mirrors, left, right, center. Nothing. The road behind me was empty. Completely empty. No headlights, no taillights, nothing. Just darkness. The car that had been following me for the last hour and a half had vanished. Where? I started to say, then stopped. It didn't matter. The car was gone. Maybe it had taken an exit. Maybe it had pulled over. Maybe it had never been there at all and I'd been hallucinating from stress and exhaustion. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I was 3 miles from Des Moines, and I needed to focus. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to relax my grip on the steering wheel, to check my gauges. Everything was normal. Fuel good, oil good, temperature 2 degrees. 2 degrees. The coldest it had been all night, and I was almost there, almost done. I took the exit for the printing facility, following the GPS directions through a series of smaller roads until I reached the industrial park where the facility was located. The gate was open. The loading docks were lit up. A forklift was waiting outside. I backed my trailer up to the dock, shut down the engine, and sat there for a minute, just breathing. My hands were still shaking. My heart was still racing. But I was here. I was safe. I'd made it. The dock worker knocked on my door, and I climbed down to give him my paperwork. He looked at me funny, like maybe I looked as rattled as I felt. But he didn't say anything, just took the papers and started the unloading process. I walked around my truck while he worked, checking for damage. Nothing. Not a scratch. Everything looked perfect, like I'd just driven through a normal January night on normal roads under normal conditions. But it hadn't been normal, I knew that. Something about that drive, something about that ice, something about that car. It hadn't been normal. I climbed back into my cab and pulled out my logbook to record the delivery time. 11:47 p.m. Earlier than I'd expected. I must have been making better time than I thought, even with the slow driving and the ice. But when I looked at my departure time, I frowned. 5:47 p.m. That was right. And I'd arrived at 11:47 p.m. That was 6 hours. 6 hours for a 7.5-hour drive? Even with speeding, even with perfect conditions, I couldn't have saved an hour and a half. It didn't make sense. I checked my GPS, looking at the route history. According to the log, I'd followed the planned route exactly. No shortcuts, no missed exits. Everything was correct. But the time... I shook my head. I was tired. I was misreading something. The math would make sense in the morning, after I'd slept. I locked my doors, climbed into my bunk, and closed my eyes. But sleep didn't come easily, because every time I started to drift off, I felt it again, that sensation of the truck sliding, of losing control, of the ice taking over. And I heard it too, faintly, like it was coming from very far away. The sound of 2 headlights following me through the darkness. I woke up at 8 in the morning, 6 hours of restless sleep that left me feeling more tired than when I'd gone to bed. The sun was up, bright and cold through my windshield. The temperature gauge read 12 degrees, warmer than last night, but still well below freezing. I climbed out of my bunk and checked my phone. 3 messages from dispatch, asking me to confirm my return trip. I was supposed to head back to Milwaukee with an empty trailer, deadheading the whole way. Not ideal, you don't make money hauling air, but that's how it worked sometimes. Dispatch promised they'd have another load waiting for me when I got back. I sent a quick reply saying I'd be on the road within the hour, then got dressed and climbed down from the cab. My legs were stiff from yesterday's drive, and the cold air hit me like a punch in the face. I walked around the truck again, doing my pre-trip inspection even though I'd checked everything last night. Tires looked good. Brakes looked good. Lights all working. Air pressure holding steady. Everything was fine. So why did I feel so uneasy? I grabbed some coffee and a breakfast sandwich from a gas station across the street from the facility, then headed back to my truck. The facility manager was outside now, talking to another driver. He waved at me as I walked past, and I waved back, trying to look more awake and alert than I felt. By 9 o'clock, I was back on the road, heading north on I-35 toward the Minnesota border. Traffic was heavier in daylight, cars and trucks moving in both directions, everyone trying to get wherever they needed to go. The sun was bright, but provided no warmth. The sky was that hard, brittle blue it gets on cold winter days when every bit of moisture has been frozen out of the air. The road looked different in daylight. Normal. Safe. The bridges I crossed showed no sign of ice. The sun had warmed them up enough to melt any thin coating that might have formed overnight. I drove at a steady 65 miles per hour, making good time, letting the miles fall away behind me. But I couldn't stop thinking about last night. The more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. The missing hour and a half in my timeline. The car that followed me and then vanished. The way the ice had grabbed my truck, then let it go at the exact moment before disaster. None of it made sense. None of it fit together the way it should. I told myself I was overthinking it. Black ice was unpredictable, that was the whole point. It grabbed you when you least expected it, and released you just as randomly. The car had probably taken an exit I didn't notice. The time discrepancy was probably a mistake in my logging, or maybe I'd been driving faster than I thought without realizing it. Logical explanations. Rational explanations. Explanations that made perfect sense if you didn't think about them too hard. But I was thinking about them. I couldn't stop thinking about them. Around 11 o'clock, I passed through Osceola, Minnesota, the same town I'd driven past last night in the darkness. In daylight, it looked like any other small Midwestern town. Gas stations, fast food restaurants, a Walmart, some houses. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening. Just a town. I kept driving, watching the landscape roll by. Flat farmland, frozen and brown under the winter sun. Bare trees scattered here and there. The occasional house or barn. Everything looked dead and cold and empty. 20 minutes north of Osceola, I saw something that made me slow down. There was a truck on the shoulder. A reefer, just like the one I'd seen last night. Same type of trailer, same refrigeration unit on the front. It was parked in almost exactly the same spot I remembered, facing north like it was headed the same direction I was going. I checked my mirrors and pulled over onto the shoulder about 100 feet behind it. I told myself I was just being cautious, just checking to make sure the driver was okay. But that wasn't the whole truth. I needed to know if this was the same truck I'd seen last night. I needed to know if I'd really seen it at all, or if that was part of whatever strange thing had happened. I climbed down from my cab and walked toward the parked truck. The wind was bitter out here, cutting through my jacket like it wasn't even there. I pulled my collar up and kept walking. As I got closer, I could see the truck was empty. The cab was locked, the windows were dark, and there was no sign of the driver. But the refrigeration unit was running, just like last night. I could hear it humming, could see the exhaust vapor rising from it into the cold air. I cupped my hands around my eyes and peered through the driver's side window. The cab looked normal. Clean. No personal items visible. No trash. No coffee cups. Just an empty seat and a steering wheel. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone here?" No answer except the wind. I walked around to the back of the trailer and checked the doors. Locked, sealed. The refrigeration unit was definitely running. I could feel the cold air coming off it, even colder than the ambient temperature. Whatever was in that trailer was being kept frozen solid. I pulled out my phone and called the number printed on the side of the trailer. It rang 4 times, then went to a generic voicemail. I left a message saying I'd found one of their trucks abandoned on I-35 in Minnesota, gave the mile marker and hung up. Then I stood there, staring at the truck, trying to figure out what bothered me about it. It took me a minute to realize there were no tracks. The shoulder was covered in frost and dead grass, and there were no footprints leading away from the truck. No sign that anyone had gotten out and walked somewhere. The only tracks were my own, coming from my truck to this one. How long had this truck been here? Long enough for any tracks to be covered by frost? That was possible, I supposed. It had been cold enough overnight. But the refrigeration unit was running, which meant the truck's battery was still good, which meant it hadn't been here more than a day or two at most. And if the driver had abandoned it recently, there should be tracks. Unless they'd left last night, during the coldest part of the night when the frost was forming, then their tracks might have been covered. Or unless they'd never gotten out of the truck at all. I walked back around to the driver's side and tried the door handle. Locked. I knocked on the window. No response. I tried the passenger side door. Also locked. This is crazy, I muttered to myself. The driver probably got a ride from someone, that's all. Nothing strange about it. But I didn't believe that, because if the driver had gotten a ride, they would have turned off the refrigeration unit first. Leaving it running would drain the battery eventually, and that was expensive. No driver in their right mind would leave it on if they were abandoning the truck. Unless they'd left in a hurry. Unless something had made them leave so quickly they didn't think to turn it off. Or unless they physically couldn't turn it off. I pulled out my phone again and dialed 911. When the dispatcher answered, I explained the situation. Abandoned truck on I-35, refrigeration unit running, no sign of the driver, no tracks leading away from it. She took down the information and said she'd send a state trooper to check it out. You should probably wait there until the officer arrives, she said. How long will that take? Maybe 20 minutes. There's a unit about 15 miles south of your location. I looked at the empty truck, at the dead grass on the shoulder, at the frozen farmland stretching out on either side of the highway. 20 minutes felt like a very long time to stand here in the cold. Okay, I said, I'll wait. I climbed back into my cab and turned on the engine, letting the heat run while I sat there. I kept my eyes on the parked truck, watching for any sign of movement. None came. It just sat there, silent and still except for the humming refrigeration unit. 15 minutes passed, then 20, then 25. Finally, I saw flashing lights in my rearview mirror, a Minnesota State Police cruiser pulling up behind my truck. I climbed down to meet the officer, a middle-aged guy with a thick mustache and a professional demeanor. You the one who called this in? He asked. Yes, sir. I noticed the truck on my way past and stopped to check if the driver needed help. He nodded and walked toward the reefer, his hand resting casually on his service weapon. Not like he expected trouble, just habit. I followed a few steps behind, watching. The officer did the same things I'd done. Checked the cab, looked in the windows, walked around the trailer. When he got to the refrigeration unit, he frowned. That's running, he said. Yes, sir, that's why I was concerned. Seems strange to leave it running if the driver left voluntarily. He pulled out his radio and called something in. The truck's plate number, I think. Then he tried the doors, found them locked, and walked back to his cruiser. I waited by my truck, stamping my feet to keep warm. A few minutes later, he came back over. The truck's registered to a refrigerated freight company out of Wisconsin. I called their dispatch and they said the driver checked in last night around 10 p.m., said he was experiencing mechanical trouble and was pulling over to assess it. They haven't heard from him since. What kind of mechanical trouble? They didn't say, but here's the thing. Dispatch said he was southbound when he called, heading from Minneapolis to Des Moines. So this truck shouldn't be facing north. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What? This truck is pointed north. If he was heading south to Des Moines, he would have pulled over facing that direction. This looks like he was heading north, back toward Minneapolis. Maybe he turned around after he stopped. Maybe. The officer didn't sound convinced. I'm going to have to get the trailer opened, check what's inside. Company's sending someone with keys, but that'll take a few hours. You said you were just passing by? Yes, sir. I made a delivery in Des Moines last night. heading back to Milwaukee now. What time did you drive through here last night? I thought about it. Around 10:30, maybe 10:45. See anything unusual? Any stopped vehicles? I hesitated. Lying to a cop wasn't smart, but telling the truth felt dangerous in a way I couldn't explain. Finally, I said, I saw a reefer parked on the shoulder. Could have been this one. I didn't stop to check. Why not? I don't know. Something felt wrong about it. The officer studied me for a moment. Wrong how? Just wrong. Like I shouldn't stop. I know that sounds stupid. Actually, he said slowly, it doesn't. I've been doing this job for 18 years, and I've learned to trust those feelings. They keep you alive sometimes. He glanced back at the parked truck. You remember anything else about last night? Other vehicles in the area? Anything that seemed off? I thought about the car that had followed me, the one that had disappeared, but that sounded even crazier than saying I'd had a bad feeling, so I shook my head. No, sir, just empty highway. He nodded and wrote something in his notebook. Okay, you're free to go. Thanks for calling it in. I climbed back into my truck and pulled away slowly, watching the scene in my mirrors. The officer was back at the reefer, examining something on the ground near the passenger side. I couldn't tell what. As I drove north, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just lied to that cop. Not about the specifics, I had told him the truth about what I'd seen, but I'd left out the important parts. The parts that didn't make sense. The parts that made me question my own memory and sanity. The car, the ice, the missing time. The feeling that something had followed me through the darkness last night. Something that used headlights as eyes and black ice as fingers. Something that maybe hadn't let me go after all. I pushed the thought away and focused on driving. The temperature gauge read 15 degrees. Warmer than last night, but still cold enough for ice in the right conditions. I kept my speed reasonable and my attention on the road. By noon, I was passing through Austin, Minnesota, the same town I'd bypassed last night in the darkness. In daylight, I could see it clearly, a decent-sized town with all the usual amenities. Normal. Safe. Boring. I kept driving. Around 1 o'clock, I crossed back into Wisconsin. The landscape didn't change much, but something about crossing that state line made me feel a little better. Like I was leaving whatever had happened behind, confined to Iowa and Minnesota, unable to follow me home. Except I didn't feel alone in the truck. I know how that sounds. But it's the truth. Ever since I'd left Des Moines this morning, I'd had this sensation of being watched. Not from outside the truck, from inside. Like someone was sitting in the passenger seat, just out of my peripheral vision, staring at me. I kept glancing over, of course. The passenger seat was empty. It was always empty, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I turned on the radio, hoping some noise would help. Country station, same one I'd been listening to last night. A song I didn't recognize, something about lost love and whiskey. I let it play. Not really listening, just wanting the cab to feel less empty. The song ended, and the DJ came on. That was Luke Combs with Forever After All, coming up on 1 o'clock here on KXYZ, and we've got a weather update for you folks. Temperatures are expected to drop tonight, down into the single digits across most of Minnesota and Wisconsin. State Patrol is advising caution on the roads, especially on bridges and overpasses. They're reporting multiple accidents this morning on I-35, all ice-related. So take it slow out there if you're driving tonight. Multiple accidents on I-35, all ice-related. I thought about that bridge last night. The one where I'd almost lost control. The one where I should have lost control, should have jackknifed or rolled or gone over the side. But somehow I'd made it across. How many other drivers hadn't been so lucky? The DJ continued. We're also getting reports of an abandoned truck found on I-35 near Osceola. State police are investigating, but they're asking anyone who traveled that stretch of highway last night to call in with any information. The number is... I didn't catch the number. My attention was fixed on my rearview mirror. There were headlights behind me, 2 bright points in the daylight maintaining an exact distance behind my truck. A quarter-mile back, maybe a little less. Just like last night. I told myself it was just another vehicle. Of course, there were other vehicles on the road. It was the middle of the day, traffic was normal. There was nothing unusual about a car following me on the highway. Except it was maintaining that exact same distance. Not getting closer, not falling back. Just staying there, precise and unwavering. I sped up to 70. The headlights sped up too. I slowed down to 60. The headlights slowed down. "No," I whispered. "No, this isn't happening." But it was happening. The car, if it was a car, was following me again. In broad daylight on a clear road, it was following me. I grabbed my phone and took a picture of my rearview mirror, capturing the headlights. The image was blurry, just 2 bright spots against the highway behind me. I couldn't tell what kind of vehicle it was. Couldn't see any details. Just lights. For the next hour, I drove with those lights in my mirror. They never got closer. Never fell back. Just maintained that exact distance like they were tethered to my truck by something invisible. I tried to stay calm. Tried to focus on the road ahead. I had maybe 80 miles left until Milwaukee. 80 miles and I'd be back at the warehouse, back in civilization, back where things made sense. But those 80 miles felt like 800. Around 2:30, I passed through Madison. The traffic got heavier, cars and trucks surrounding me on all sides. I couldn't see the headlights anymore. Too many other vehicles in the way. I told myself that was good. They were gone. Whatever had been following me had gotten lost in the traffic. Except when I got past Madison and the traffic thinned out again, the headlights were still there. Same distance, same position. Like nothing had happened. "What do you want?" I said out loud. No answer. Just those 2 points of light, steady and bright. I thought about pulling over, forcing a confrontation, but every time I considered it, that feeling in my chest came back. That sense of wrongness, of danger. My instincts were screaming at me to keep driving, to not stop, to get to Milwaukee as fast as possible. So I kept driving. By 3:30, I could see Milwaukee on the horizon. The city spread out ahead of me, familiar and comforting. I'd been based out of this city for 5 years now. I knew these roads. This was home. I took the exit for the warehouse, winding through surface streets until I reached the familiar chain-link fence and the big sign that said Midwest Freight Services. I pulled into the yard, backed my empty trailer into a spot, and shut down the engine. Then I sat there for a minute, catching my breath, letting my heart rate slow down. I checked my rearview mirror. The headlights were gone. The road behind me was empty. Whatever had been following me hadn't followed me into the yard. I climbed down from my cab and walked to the office to check in with dispatch. My legs felt weak, shaky. I probably looked like hell. The dispatcher, a woman named Rita, who'd been working here longer than I'd been driving, took one look at me and frowned. "You okay, Mike?" she asked. "My name is Mike. Mike Patterson." I realized I hadn't mentioned that yet. Funny, what details you forget when you're telling a story. "Yeah," I said, "just a long trip. Des Moines and back, right? Should have been easy." Should have been. I handed her my paperwork. "Any more loads going out today?" "Not for you. You look exhausted. Go home, get some sleep. We'll have something for you tomorrow." I nodded and headed back to my truck. Home sounded good. A shower, a real bed, some food, normal things, safe things. I climbed into my truck to grab my personal items, and that's when I noticed it. There was frost on my passenger side window, on the inside. I stared at it for a long moment, not understanding. The cab was warm. I'd been running the heat all day. There shouldn't be frost inside the truck. That didn't make sense, unless something very cold had been sitting in the passenger seat. I reached out and touched the frost. It was real, not a smudge or a trick of the light. Real frost, coating the inside of the window in delicate, crystalline patterns. My hand was shaking as I pulled it back. I grabbed my bag and climbed down from the truck, locked the doors, and walked to my car without looking back. I didn't want to know if there was anything else wrong with the truck. I didn't want to see anything else that couldn't be explained. I just wanted to go home. I didn't drive for 3 days after that. Called in sick, told dispatch I had the flu or food poisoning or something. Rita didn't question it. She'd seen how I looked when I checked in. She probably figured I'd been pushing too hard and needed a break. The truth was, I was afraid. Afraid to get back in the truck. Afraid of what might follow me on the next drive. Afraid that whatever had happened on I-35 that night wasn't finished with me yet. I spent those 3 days in my apartment, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. The ice, the car, the frost on the window, all of it could be explained rationally if I just thought about it hard enough. Black ice was real and dangerous, but it was just physics. Cars on highways weren't sinister. They were just vehicles driven by normal people going normal places. And frost could form on windows for all kinds of reasons that had nothing to do with supernatural passengers. But I couldn't shake the feeling, the knowledge that something had been in my truck, something cold and patient and wrong. On the 4th day, I got a call from Rita. "You feeling better?" she asked. "Yeah, mostly." "Good, because I need you to do me a favor. We've got a load going to Des Moines." "No." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, "Mike, is there a problem?" I'd rather not do Des Moines right now. Can you give it to someone else?" Another pause. "What happened on that run?" "Nothing. Nothing happened. I'd prefer a different route." "Mike, you're one of my best drivers. I've never heard you refuse a load before. What's going on?" I didn't know what to say. How do you explain that you're afraid of a highway? That you think something followed you home from Iowa? That you found frost on your window that shouldn't have been there? "Just personal preference," I finally said. "I'll take any other route, just not I-35. Rita sighed. "Okay, I've got a load going to Indianapolis instead. That work for you?" "Yes, thank you." "But Mike? Eventually, we're going to need to talk about this. You can't just avoid an entire highway forever." "I know. Except I wasn't sure I did know. Maybe I could avoid it. Maybe I could spend the rest of my career finding reasons not to drive through Iowa and Minnesota. Maybe that would be enough." I picked up the Indianapolis load that afternoon. Automotive parts. Nothing special. The route took me south through Illinois, skirting around Chicago, then east through Indiana. Different highways, different landscapes, different everything. It should have felt safer. But an hour into the drive, I saw headlights in my mirror. 2 bright points, maintaining an exact distance behind me. No, not again, not possible. I sped up. The headlights sped up. I slowed down. The headlights slowed down. "What do you want?" I shouted at the rearview mirror. The headlights didn't respond. They just kept following, steady and patient, and utterly indifferent to my fear. I pulled over at a rest stop, my hands shaking so badly I could barely steer. I parked in the truck section and sat there, engine idling, watching my mirrors. The headlights pulled into the rest stop behind me, but instead of parking, the vehicle, whatever it was, drove slowly through the parking lot, past my truck, and then out onto the highway again. As it passed, I tried to see what it was. A car? A truck? Something else? But I couldn't make it out. All I could see were those two headlights, bright and unwavering. The body of the vehicle seemed to fade into shadow or darkness, like it wasn't fully there, like it was more headlights than actual vehicle. It merged back onto the highway and disappeared into traffic. I sat in that rest stop for 20 minutes, trying to calm down. Other trucks came and went. Normal trucks, driven by normal drivers, doing normal things. No one else seemed concerned. No one else seemed to notice anything strange. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe the stress of that night on I-35 had broken something in my brain, and now I was seeing things that weren't there. Or maybe something had attached itself to me. Something that used black ice as a weapon and headlights as a disguise. Something that I'd encountered on that frozen highway, and that now wouldn't let me go. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd never done before. I searched for information about I-35 and accidents. What I found didn't make me feel better. There were dozens of results. Hundreds, maybe. Reports of accidents, fatalities, unexplained crashes. But what caught my attention were the patterns. Multiple drivers reported losing control on clear roads with no visible ice. Multiple drivers reported being followed by unidentified vehicles that vanished without explanation. Multiple drivers reported experiencing lost time during their drives, arriving at their destinations earlier or later than their logged hours suggested. And all of them on I-35, all of them in winter. All of them on the stretch of highway between Des Moines and the Minnesota border. I found a forum, one of those trucker community sites where drivers share stories and advice. There was a thread about I-35, and it was long, really long. Hundreds of posts going back years. One post stood out. I've been driving for 30 years, and I won't touch I-35 in winter anymore. Lost 3 friends on that highway. All of them single-vehicle accidents. All of them on clear nights with good weather. They just lost control. That's what the report said. But I talked to one of them in the hospital before he died, and he told me something different. He said the road took him. Said it grabbed his truck and wouldn't let go, and when it finally did, he was upside down in a ditch with his spine broken. He said it felt like the road was alive, like it was hungry. Another post. Anyone else notice the headlights? I swear every time I drive that route at night, there's a vehicle following me. Same distance, same position. Doesn't matter how fast I go or where I exit, it's just there. My buddy said I was being paranoid, but then he drove it, and he saw them too. We don't talk about it anymore, but I know he stopped taking loads through Iowa. And another, the black ice on I-35 isn't normal. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. I've driven through ice storms, blizzards, freezing rain. I know what black ice feels like. This is different. It doesn't act like regular ice. It grabs you when it shouldn't be there, and it lets you go when you should be dead. Like it's playing with you. Like it's testing you. And sometimes it doesn't let go at all. I closed the forum and put my phone away. My hands were still shaking. There were other drivers out there who'd experienced what I had. I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy. But that didn't make it better. If anything, it made it worse. Because it meant this was real. Whatever was on I-35, whatever used black ice and headlights and lost time as weapons, it was real. And it had decided to follow me home. I finished the Indianapolis run without further incident. No more headlights in my mirror, no more strange feelings. Just normal highway driving with normal traffic. I told myself that maybe the rest stop had broken whatever connection existed. Maybe by stopping, by confronting it, even passively, I'd ended it. But I didn't believe that. Over the next 2 weeks, I took every load dispatch offered except the ones going through Iowa. I drove to Chicago, to Indianapolis, to St. Louis, to Louisville. I stayed busy, kept moving, tried not to think about that night on I-35. But the headlights kept appearing. Not every time. Maybe one trip in 3. But they'd show up in my mirror, 2 bright points maintaining that exact distance, and they'd follow me for hours before disappearing. Sometimes at night, sometimes during the day. Sometimes on highways, sometimes on back roads. Always the same pattern. Always the same distance. I stopped looking at my mirrors unless I had to. I started taking different routes to the same destinations, trying to throw off whatever was following me. Nothing worked. The headlights always found me eventually. I was losing sleep, losing weight. Rita noticed. She pulled me aside after one run and asked if everything was okay at home. I told her I was fine, just stressed about money or a girlfriend or something equally meaningless. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. What could I tell her? That I was being haunted by headlights? That something from a frozen highway in Iowa had attached itself to me like a parasite? She'd send me to a therapist or fire me for mental instability. Maybe both. On a Tuesday night in February, I was driving back from St. Louis on I-55, approaching Springfield, Illinois. It was late, almost midnight, and traffic was light. The temperature had dropped into the 20s, and the roads were starting to show patches of frost in my headlights. The headlights appeared in my mirror, right on schedule. I was so tired of them, tired of the fear, tired of the stress, tired of checking my rearview mirror every few seconds. So I did something stupid. I pulled over, just yanked my truck onto the shoulder and stopped, flashers on, waiting. If something wanted to follow me, fine, let it follow me, let it show itself. I was done running. The headlights approached in my mirror, getting closer than they ever had before. Close enough that I could almost see something. A shape. A vehicle. But it was indistinct. Blurry. Like I was looking at it through frosted glass. It pulled up behind my truck and stopped. I grabbed a flashlight from my glove box and climbed down from my cab. The cold hit me like a physical force, stealing my breath. I walked back toward the vehicle with the flashlight raised, aiming it at the headlights. They were bright, painfully bright, but I kept the flashlight pointed at them, trying to see past the glare, trying to see what was behind them. And slowly, as my eyes adjusted, I began to see. It wasn't a car. It wasn't a truck. It was... I don't know how to describe it. A shape, maybe. A presence. Something that existed in the space between the headlights, using them as anchor points. The body of the vehicle, if it even had a body, seemed to shift and waver, like heat shimmer or black ice. That's what it looked like. Like black ice made vertical, pulled up from the road and formed into something vaguely vehicle-shaped. Transparent. Invisible, unless you looked at it just right. Reflecting the light around it so perfectly that you couldn't quite focus on it. I stood there, staring, my flashlight beam cutting through it without resistance. And in that moment, I understood. This thing wasn't following me. It was part of me now. Had been since that night on I-35, when I'd driven across that bridge and felt the ice take control of my truck. The ice that should have killed me, but didn't. The ice that had let me go. Except it hadn't let me go. Not really. It had just gotten inside my truck. Inside me. And now, it was using my mirrors to watch, using my headlights as eyes, using my presence as an anchor to this world of motion and warmth and life. I was carrying it with me, everywhere I went. "What do you want?" I whispered. The shape between the headlights shifted, changed. And for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw something else. Something that might have been a face, or might have been the memory of a face. Features frozen and blurred, expression locked in something between terror and resignation. A driver. Someone who'd lost control on I-35 and never made it home. Someone the ice had taken completely, instead of just partially. Someone who was now trapped in this thing, this frozen presence that lived between the headlights and the highway, and it wanted me to join it. I stumbled backward, dropping my flashlight. It hit the frozen shoulder and went out, plunging everything into darkness except for those two bright points. The headlights. They didn't move, just watched. I turned and ran back to my truck, my breath coming in ragged gasps that froze in the air. I climbed into the cab, slammed the door, locked it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine started. I threw the truck into gear and pulled back onto the highway, not checking my mirrors, not looking back. Just driving, faster than I should have. Faster than was safe. After about 5 miles, I couldn't help it. I checked my rearview mirror. The headlights were gone, but the passenger seat window was frosted over. On the inside, again, and this time I could see something in the frost. A pattern, like someone had dragged their finger through it, writing something. I didn't want to look, didn't want to see what it said, but I looked anyway. 2 words, written in reverse so they'd read correctly from my seat. Soon, Mike. That was 3 months ago. I haven't driven I-35 since that night in January. I won't. I don't care how much money I lose. I don't care if dispatch fires me. I'm never going back to that highway. But it doesn't matter, because the thing from that highway, the thing that lives in the black ice, the thing that wears headlights like eyes, it's still with me, in my truck, in my mirrors, waiting. It appears every few trips now. Sometimes I'll go a week without seeing it, and I'll start to think maybe it's gone. Maybe I'm free. Then I'll be driving through Indiana or Illinois or Wisconsin, and there it'll be in my rearview mirror. 2 bright points of light, maintaining that exact distance. Reminding me that it hasn't forgotten, that it's patient, that it's waiting for me to drive past a bridge at the wrong moment, or to hit a patch of ice at the wrong angle, or to make the wrong decision at the wrong time, waiting for me to become like that face I saw between the headlights, frozen and trapped and lost. I've tried everything. I had a priest bless my truck. Didn't work. I tried burning sage in the cab like some internet article suggested. Didn't work. I even traded trucks, got assigned to a completely different rig. The first time I drove it, the headlights showed up in my mirror within an hour. It's not the truck that's haunted. It's me. Last week, I looked up that abandoned reefer from I-35, the one the state trooper was investigating. Turns out they found the driver, or what was left of him. He was in the trailer, frozen solid, even though the refrigeration unit had only been running for a day. The coroner said the body temperature was well below what the unit could produce. Said it looked like the driver had been frozen from the inside out. They ruled it an accident. Equipment malfunction. But I know better. The ice got him. Completely. Pulled him right out of his cab and into the frozen darkness, and that was that. I wonder how long it'll be before it gets me. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know. If I disappear, if my truck ends up abandoned on some highway with the engine running and no sign of me, I need someone to understand what happened. The black ice on I-35 isn't normal. It's alive, or something like alive. It hunts. It takes drivers and traps them in the frozen space between the road and the night. And once it marks you, once it decides you're next, you can't escape. You can only wait. I'm still driving, still working, still doing my job. But every time I start my engine, every time I pull out onto a highway, I wonder if this is the trip where it finally takes me. Where the ice grabs my truck and doesn't let go, and I end up like that face between the headlights, frozen and lost and trapped forever in the darkness. Rita called me yesterday. Said there's a load going to Des Moines. Said it pays double because nobody else wants to take it. Everyone knows about I-35 now. Everyone knows that highway's cursed, even if they won't say it out loud. She asked if I'd do it. Told me it would really help the company out. Told me I'm her best driver, and if anyone can handle it, I can. I told her I'd think about it. But I won't, I can't, because if I go back to that highway, if I drive across those bridges where the ice took control of my truck that night in January, I think that's what it's waiting for. I think that's what it wants, for me to come back, to finish what started. So I won't go. I'll find another job, another company. Maybe I'll stop driving trucks altogether. Maybe I'll... Hold on. Someone's knocking on my door. I'm not expecting anyone. It's 2 a.m. Who would... The knocking's getting louder, more insistent. I'm looking through the peephole, but I can't see anyone. Just darkness. And are those headlights in my parking lot? They can't be. I'm on the 3rd floor. There's no road here, no highway. Just an apartment parking lot. But they're there. 2 bright points aimed directly at my door. The temperature in my apartment is dropping. I can see my breath. The windows are frosting over from the inside. The knocking stopped. Now there's just the sound of ice, cracking, spreading, like footsteps on a frozen lake, coming closer. I understand now. It's not waiting for me to go back to I-35. It's not waiting at all anymore. It's here. And it's... My name is Tommy Reeves, and I've been hauling freight for 11 years. Not the longest career in trucking, but long enough to know the roads, know the weather, and know when something doesn't feel right. February 14th started like any other Tuesday. I woke up in my apartment in Omaha at 5 a.m, made coffee, checked my phone for the dispatch message I knew would be there. Sure enough, Rita had sent it at 4:47 a.m. Load ready at 7. Machine parts to Sioux Falls. Call when you're rolling. Sioux Falls was a straight shot north on I-29, about 3.5 hours if traffic cooperated. Easy run. I'd done it dozens of times. The weather app on my phone showed clear skies all the way up. No precipitation, light winds, temperatures in the mid-20s. Perfect winter driving weather. I showered, got dressed, grabbed a breakfast burrito from the gas station near my place, and headed to the yard. The sun wasn't up yet, but the sky was that pale gray color it gets right before dawn. Cold, but clear. My breath made little clouds in the air as I walked to my truck. My rig was a 2019 Freightliner Cascadia. Nothing fancy, but reliable. I'd been driving it for 2 years and knew every sound it made, every quirk in the handling. I did my pre-trip inspection by flashlight. Tires good, lights working, air pressure holding steady at 120 psi. Everything looked solid. The load was already waiting when I got to the warehouse. Pallets of industrial machine parts wrapped in plastic and strapped down tight. The forklift operator helped me secure everything, and by 7:15 I was pulling out of the yard with my paperwork signed and my logbook updated. The sun was coming up as I merged onto I-29 North. The sky turned from gray to pink, to that brilliant winter blue that only happens when the air is crystal clear and bone dry. I could see for miles in every direction. Flat Nebraska farmland stretching out to the horizon, broken up by the occasional barn or silo. No clouds, no fog, just endless visibility. I settled into the drive, letting muscle memory take over. I-29 was a good highway, well maintained, mostly straight, not too much traffic this early in the morning. I kept my speed at a steady 65 and listened to a podcast about true crime. Some case from the 70s involving a missing family in Oregon. I wasn't really paying attention to the details. It was just background noise to keep my mind occupied. Around 8:30, I crossed into Iowa. The landscape didn't change. Still flat, still frozen, still empty. But something made me turn off the podcast and switch to the radio instead. I don't know why, just a feeling. I found a local station out of Sioux City and let it play. Classic rock, mostly. Some commercials. A weather update every 20 minutes. The DJ kept emphasizing how clear the weather was, how lucky we were to have such good driving conditions. Not a cloud in the sky, folks. Perfect day for a road trip. Just bundle up. It's 23 degrees out there. 23 degrees. Cold, but not dangerously cold. Well above the point where black ice becomes a serious concern. Black ice usually forms when temperatures drop below freezing, and there's some kind of moisture on the road. Rain, fog, melting snow. But the roads were bone dry. I could see them clearly in the morning light. Clean asphalt, no shine, no wetness. Nothing to worry about. Still, I found myself checking my mirrors more often than usual. Not sure why. Just that feeling again. Around 9 o'clock, I saw another truck about half a mile ahead of me. A reefer, judging by the shape of the trailer. It was moving at about the same speed I was, maybe a little slower. I closed the distance gradually over the next few minutes until I was about a quarter mile behind it. The truck looked normal. White trailer with some company logo I couldn't quite make out from this distance. Running lights all working. No visible damage. Just another trucker doing another run. But something about it bothered me. The way it was staying in the right lane, not passing anything, not varying its speed. Just maintaining this steady, constant pace. I thought about passing it, but there was no real reason to. I wasn't in a hurry. The truck wasn't going slow enough to be annoying. I just let it be and maintained my distance. We drove like that for about 20 minutes, me following, the other truck leading. The sun was fully up now, bright and cold. The highway stretched out ahead of us, empty except for the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. Then the other truck's brake lights came on. Not a panic stop, just a gradual slowing. I eased off my accelerator and watched. The truck slowed from 65 to 50, then to 40. Its right turn signal came on. Was it taking the next exit? But there was no exit coming up. I'd driven this route enough times to know. The next exit was another 15 miles north. The truck pulled onto the shoulder and stopped. I frowned and slowed down even more, trying to see what was wrong. As I passed, I looked over at the cab. The driver was a woman. I could see her silhouette through the window. She was sitting perfectly still, both hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. Not looking at her phone, not moving, just sitting. I thought about stopping to see if she needed help, but something made me keep going. That feeling again. The one that said something wasn't right. I watched the truck in my mirror as it fell away behind me. The driver still hadn't moved. Just sitting there on the shoulder, engine running, staring straight ahead. 5 minutes later, I saw another truck pulled over on the shoulder. Different company, different trailer type. But the same thing, just sitting there, engine running, no visible problem. As I passed, I could see the driver in the cab. A man this time, also just sitting there with his hands on the wheel, not moving. "What the hell?" I muttered. I grabbed my CB radio and keyed the mic. Breaker 19, this is Tomcat northbound on I-29 at mile marker 73. Anyone else seeing these stopped trucks? Static. Then a voice came through, older guy by the sound of it. Tomcat, this is Grizzly. Yeah, I saw 2 of them about 10 miles back. Thought maybe they were having mechanical issues, but they both looked fine. Weird, right? Real weird. I agreed. Either of them have their flashers on? Negative. Just sitting there like they pulled over to check their phone or something. Same here. You think we should call it in? Pause. Call what in? Some trucks are parked on the shoulder. State Patrol would laugh at us. They're probably fine. Maybe dispatch told them to hold position for some reason. That made sense, sort of. Except dispatch would tell a driver to exit the highway and park somewhere safe, not just pull onto the shoulder in the middle of nowhere. Copy that, Grizzly. Stay safe out there. You too, Tomcat. 10-4. I hung the CB back on its mount and focused on the road ahead. The sun was bright enough now that I had to flip down my visor. The glare off the asphalt was intense. That's what happens when the road is dry and the sun hits it at just the right angle. Everything becomes brilliant and washed out. I passed another stopped truck, then another, then two more in quick succession. All the same, just sitting on the shoulder, engines running, drivers visible in the cabs but not moving, not doing anything, just sitting. My heart was starting to beat faster. This wasn't normal, this was something else. But what? I grabbed my phone and called dispatch. Rita answered on the second ring. Hey Tommy, you on schedule? Yeah, but Rita, something weird's happening on I-29. There are trucks pulled over everywhere. Must be 8 or 9 of them between the Iowa border and where I am now. All of them just sitting there with their drivers inside, not moving. Silence on the other end. Then, are their flashers on? No, that's what's weird. No flashers, no warning triangles, nothing. They're just stopped. Have you tried talking to any of them on the CB? No, but I could do that. Find out what's going on. Maybe there's some kind of checkpoint ahead or something and they're waiting for clearance. A checkpoint wouldn't make them pull onto the shoulder. And why wouldn't they tell other drivers about it on the CB? I don't know, Tommy. Just figure it out and call me back. She hung up. Helpful, as always. I grabbed the CB again. Breaker 19, this is Tomcat calling any northbound drivers on I-29. I'm seeing a lot of stopped trucks on the shoulder. Anyone know what's going on? Static. Then multiple voices came through at once, talking over each other. Something on the weather report. Dispatcher told me to hold. Can't explain it, but I had to stop. The road just didn't feel right. I keyed the mic again. Say again. One at a time, please. The static cleared and a woman's voice came through, shaky and uncertain. This is Nighthawk. I pulled over about 20 minutes ago. I don't really know why. I just had this feeling that I needed to stop driving. That if I kept going, something bad would happen. Another voice. A man. Hammer here. Same thing happened to me. Was driving along, everything normal. Then I just got this overwhelming sense that I needed to pull over right now. So I did. A third voice. Ironside. I'm one of the stopped trucks too. It's the damnedest thing. I don't feel sick or tired. The truck's running fine, but I can't make myself put it in gear and get back on the highway. Every time I try, I just can't. The woman's voice came back. Has anyone else felt it? The cold? Silence. Then several voices at once. Yes. Yeah, definitely. What cold? I asked. It's 23 degrees out. That's not that cold. Nighthawk responded. Not that kind of cold. It's like the cold is coming from the road. Like the asphalt itself is frozen, even though it's dry. I can feel it through my floorboard, through the steering wheel. It's wrong. I looked down at my own steering wheel. It felt normal, slightly cool from the morning air, but not cold, not frozen. I'm not feeling anything like that. You're still moving, Ironside said. We all felt fine when we were moving. It's when you slow down that you feel it, when you stop. That's when the cold comes. What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. I know it doesn't, he said, and I could hear the fear in his voice. But it's true. Don't slow down, Tomcat. Don't stop. Just keep going. I looked at my speedometer. 65 miles per hour. The road ahead looked clear. No traffic, no obstacles, no reason to slow down. But Sioux Falls was only about 60 miles away now. Eventually, I'd have to exit, have to slow down, have to stop. What happens if I do stop? I asked. No one answered. The CB just hissed with static. Then Nighthawk's voice came back, barely above a whisper. We don't know. We're all too afraid to find out. I looked in my rearview mirror. I could see several of the stopped trucks behind me now, strung out along the shoulder like beads on a string, and in my side mirror, I could see one ahead of me too. The woman I'd passed first, she was still there, still sitting in her cab, still not moving. How many trucks were stopped? 10, 15, more? And what the hell was stopping them? I thought about pulling over, joining them, figuring this out together. But everything in me screamed not to. Every instinct I had said keep moving, keep your speed up, don't stop. Not here, not on this highway, not today. So I didn't stop. I kept my foot steady on the accelerator and watched the road ahead. The sun was so bright now it was almost painful. The glare off the asphalt made everything shimmer and wave. I had to squint even with my visor down. And that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was just the glare, a trick of the light. But as I got closer, I could see it more clearly. The road ahead looked different. Not wet, not obviously icy, just different. Like the surface had changed somehow, like it wasn't quite asphalt anymore. I eased off the gas, letting my speed drop to 60. 55, 50. The different-looking section of road was coming up fast. About a quarter-mile ahead now. And the closer I got, the more wrong it looked. It was too smooth. That was the problem. Asphalt has texture. You can see the aggregate in it, the tiny variations in color and surface. But this section ahead looked perfectly smooth, perfectly uniform. Like someone had poured glass over the highway, or ice. But that was impossible. The temperature was above freezing. The sky was clear. There was no moisture in the air, no fog, no precipitation. Ice couldn't form under these conditions. It was physically impossible. Unless it wasn't. Unless the ice on I-29 that day was something else. Something that didn't follow the normal rules. I was doing 45 now, still slowing, trying to decide what to do. The strange section of road was only a few hundred feet ahead. I could see where it started. A sharp line across both lanes where the normal asphalt ended and the smooth, glass-like surface began. It stretched ahead for what looked like several miles, maybe all the way to Sioux Falls. The CB crackled. "Tomcat, this is Grizzly. You still moving?" I grabbed the mic. "Yeah, but there's something weird ahead. The road looks different." "Different how?" "I don't know how to describe it. It's too smooth, too perfect. Like it's not asphalt anymore." Pause. "Are you seeing ice?" "I don't think so. It doesn't look wet or shiny. It just looks wrong." "Listen to me, Tomcat. I'm about 40 miles behind you. I've been listening to the CB chatter. Something's not right on I-29 today. I don't know what it is, but I'm turning around, taking Highway 20 instead. I think you should too. I'm less than an hour from my delivery. I can't just turn around." "Yes, you can. Tell dispatch there's a safety issue. They'll understand." Would they? I wasn't sure. But I was sure about one thing. I didn't want to drive over that strange section of road. I was down to 30 miles per hour now. The glass-like section was right in front of me. My front tires were about to hit it, and then I felt it. The cold, not through the air, not from outside, from below. Like the floorboard of my cab had suddenly dropped to sub-zero temperatures. I could feel it through my boots, through my jeans. A cold so intense it made my teeth ache. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The wheel was cold too now. Not just cool, actually cold. Like I was gripping a metal bar that had been left in a freezer overnight. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." My front tires hit the smooth section of road. Instantly, I felt the traction change. Not like hitting ice. There was no slide, no loss of control. But the feel was different. Like my tires weren't quite touching the road anymore. Like there was a microscopic gap between the rubber and the surface, and my truck was floating across it on a cushion of something that wasn't quite air and wasn't quite friction. I should have been sliding. At 30 miles per hour on actual ice, I should have been in serious trouble. But the truck stayed straight, responded to my steering, maintained its course. Everything felt normal except for that floating sensation and the cold radiating up through the floorboard. I looked in my rearview mirror. The normal section of road was falling away behind me. I was fully on the strange surface now, and my speedometer was reading 28 miles per hour even though my foot was still in the exact same position on the accelerator. I was slowing down, without touching the brake, without changing anything. 26 miles per hour. 24. 22. "No," I said again. "No, don't stop. Don't stop." I pressed down on the accelerator. The engine revved, but the speed didn't increase. 20 miles per hour. 18. 16. The truck was stopping, or the road was stopping it. I couldn't tell which. But my speed was dropping steadily, inexorably, and there was nothing I could do about it. The CB crackled with voices. "Don't stop. Keep moving. It'll take you if you stop." But I was stopping. 14 miles per hour. 12. 10. The cold was intense now. I could see my breath in the cab even though the heater was running full blast. Ice was forming on the inside of my windshield, creeping across the glass in crystalline patterns. My hands were numb where they gripped the steering wheel. 8 miles per hour. 6. 4. "Please," I whispered. "Please don't." 2 miles per hour. The truck came to a complete stop. I sat there, engine running, both hands on the wheel, staring at the ice spreading across my windshield. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Perfect fractal patterns, like snowflakes magnified 1,000 times. Growing faster now, consuming the glass, blocking my view of the road ahead. The cold was unbearable. My entire body was shaking. I could hear my teeth chattering. The heater was still running, but it might as well have been pumping in Arctic air for all the good it did. And then I heard it. A sound like footsteps on ice. Crack, 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 coming from somewhere behind my truck. Getting closer. I looked in my side mirror, but it was frosted over. I couldn't see anything. Just white, just ice. The footsteps stopped. Right outside my door. Someone knocked. 3 times, slow and deliberate. I didn't move. Couldn't move. Every muscle in my body was locked up, whether from cold or fear, I couldn't tell. The knock came again. More insistent this time. "Who's there?" I managed to say, though my voice came out as barely a whisper. No answer. Just another knock. I reached for the door lock, wanting to make sure it was engaged. My fingers were so numb I could barely feel the button. I pressed it down. Click. Locked. The door handle moved. Someone was trying to open it. Trying to get in. "Go away!" I shouted, my voice breaking. The handle stopped moving. Silence. Then the knocking started again. But this time it was on the passenger side. How had they gotten around my truck so fast? I looked at the passenger door. Through the frost on the window, I could see a shape. Someone standing there. Tall and thin and completely motionless except for the hand that was knocking on the door. Knock, knock, knock. "What do you want?" The knocking stopped. The shape leaned closer to the window. and through the frost I could see a face, or what might have been a face once. Features frozen and blurred, skin blue-white, eyes that were just dark hollows filled with ice. A voice came through the door, not loud, but perfectly clear despite the glass between us. "Let me in, Tommy. It's so cold out here." I knew that voice. I'd heard it on the CB just minutes ago. It was Nighthawk, the female driver who'd stopped first. "You're not her," I said. "She's still in her truck." "She was in her truck," the voice said. "Before the cold came, before she stopped moving. Now she's here with us, and you're about to be too." No, I'm not stopping. I'm leaving." I threw the truck into gear and pressed down on the accelerator. Nothing happened. The engine revved, but the truck didn't move. It just sat there, frozen to the road. Or frozen by the road, I couldn't tell which. I tried reverse, same thing, no movement. "You can't leave, Tommy. None of us can leave. The road won't let us. Not once we've stopped. Not once the ice has us." "There is no ice," I screamed. "The roads are clear. The weather report said." "The weather report lied," the voice said. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe this ice was never about the weather. Maybe it was always here, waiting. Just invisible. Just patient. Waiting for the right day, the right conditions, the right drivers. More shapes were appearing outside my truck now. I could see them through the frosted windows. Tall, thin figures standing in a circle around my cab. 8 of them, 10, more appearing every second. All frozen, all dead, all waiting. "This is the ice you don't see," the voice said. "The ice that forms when drivers stop believing it's there. When they trust the weather report. When they think clear skies mean safe roads. That's when it takes them." One of the figures reached up and placed a hand on my driver's side window. The frost spread instantly, growing out from the handprint in perfect spirals. I could see through it for just a moment. Could see the hand itself. Blue-white flesh, fingers too long, nails black with frostbite. Then the entire window was white. Opaque, I was sealed in. "Let us in, Tommy," multiple voices said now, speaking in unison. "It's warmer inside. We're so cold out here. We've been cold for so long." I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. No signal. Of course not. Whatever this was, it had cut me off from everything. From help. From hope. The CB was still working, though. I grabbed the mic. "This is Tomcat. Emergency. I-29 northbound, mile marker 96. I need help. Something's wrong. The ice, static." Then a different voice came through. Official sounding. "Copy, Tomcat. This is Sioux Falls Dispatch. We're showing clear conditions on I-29. What is the nature of your emergency?" "The road," I gasped. "The road is frozen. There's ice everywhere. I'm surrounded by..." "Sir, our weather sensors show no ice conditions on I-29. Temperature is 24 degrees, no precipitation, no moisture. Are you experiencing a medical emergency? Are you feeling disoriented?" "I'm not." I stopped. Was I? Was this all in my head? Some kind of hallucination brought on by carbon monoxide poisoning or a stroke or something? But the cold was real. I could feel it. And the shapes outside my truck were real. I could see them. And the voice. "Tommy," Nighthawk's voice again. Right next to my ear, like she was sitting in the passenger seat. But the passenger seat was empty. I could see it. Empty and frosting over. "Tommy, you're going to be one of us now. The ice has decided, but you can choose how. You can fight it and freeze slowly, painfully, screaming the whole time. Or you can open the door and let us in. Let the cold take you quickly, peacefully. It's not so bad, being ice. You don't hurt anymore. Don't fear anymore. Don't feel anything except the cold. And after a while, Even that feels like home. No, I said. No, I'm not opening that door. Then you'll freeze where you sit. Like the others who fought. We'll wait. We're very patient. We've been waiting for years, for decades. Since the first drivers stopped on this highway and never moved again. Since the first time the ice learned it could do this, take people without weather, without warning, just by being invisible, just by being patient. I looked at my dashboard. The temperature gauge was plummeting. 50 degrees, 40, 30. The heater was losing its fight against whatever cold was invading my truck. 20 degrees. 10. My fingers were going numb. I couldn't feel the steering wheel anymore, couldn't feel my feet. The frost was inside the cab now, forming on the dashboard, on the seats, on my clothes. 0 degrees. I was going to die. Right here in my truck on a clear February day with the sun shining and the weather report saying everything was fine. I was going to freeze to death because I'd stopped moving on a highway that didn't want to let me go. But I wasn't going to open that door. I wasn't going to let them in. Whatever they were, whatever they'd become, I wasn't joining them. -5 degrees. -10. Everything was white now. Ice covered every surface inside the cab. I couldn't see out the windows, couldn't see the dashboard, could barely see my own hands on the wheel. The voices outside had gone quiet. The shapes had stopped moving. They were just waiting now, watching, knowing it was only a matter of time. -20 degrees. I closed my eyes. I was so cold I couldn't even shiver anymore. My body had given up on generating heat. This was it. This was how it ended. And then I felt it. Warmth. Just a tiny bit, but it was there. Coming from somewhere near my right hip. My phone, in my pocket. It was warm. I pulled it out with fingers that barely functioned. The screen was cracked, probably from the cold. But it was glowing. A text message from Rita. "Tommy, you there? Lost your signal. Call me." Signal. I had signal again, somehow. With the last bit of strength I had, I pressed her number. It rang once, twice. She answered. "Tommy? Jesus, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for 20 minutes. Rita," I croaked. "Help. I-29. Mile 96 stopped. Can't move. Cold. So cold." "What? I can barely hear you. Are you hurt?" "Ice," I whispered. "The ice you don't see." "What ice?" "Tommy, the roads are clear. I'm looking at the traffic cams right now. I-29 is completely clear." "Look closer," I said. "Look at the trucks." Silence. Then, "Oh my God. You see them? There are, Tommy, there are at least 20 trucks stopped on the shoulder between you and Sioux Falls. Just sitting there. No movement, no flashers. What the hell is going on? Send help. Send everyone. Police, fire, EMTs. Don't let them get close. Don't let them stop." "Tommy, I'm calling 911 right now. Stay on the line." But I couldn't stay on the line. The phone was getting cold again. The warmth was fading. The screen was going dark. "Rita," I said, tell them the ice is real, even when you can't see it. Especially when you can't see it." The phone died in my hands. I sat there in the darkness and the cold, waiting. For death or rescue or something else. I didn't know which would come first. The knocking on the doors had stopped. The voices were gone. Even the shapes outside had vanished, or maybe I just couldn't see them anymore through the ice. I was alone, completely alone, trapped in a frozen tomb on a clear February day. And as the cold finally took me, as my thoughts started to slow and stop and freeze like everything else, I had one last coherent thought. They were right. The weather report hadn't lied. The skies were clear. The temperature was above freezing. There was no ice on I-29 that day. No ice you could see. But the ice was there anyway. Had always been there. Would always be there. Invisible. Patient. Hungry. Waiting for drivers to stop. Waiting for drivers like me. I didn't die. That's the first thing you need to know. Despite the cold, despite the ice, despite everything, I didn't die. The paramedics found me 3 hours later. By then, my core body temperature had dropped to 86 degrees. Severe hypothermia. They said another 20 minutes and I would have been gone. They said it was a miracle I survived. But it didn't feel like a miracle. It felt like I'd been spared, preserved, left alive for a reason I didn't understand yet. They took me to a hospital in Sioux Falls, wrapped me in heated blankets, pumped me full of warm fluids, monitored my vitals for signs of organ damage. I was there for 2 days. The doctors kept asking me how it happened, how I'd gotten so cold when the temperature outside had been in the 20s and I'd been sitting in a running truck with the heater on. I couldn't explain it. Didn't try. Just said I didn't know. Must have been some kind of equipment failure. They accepted that answer because the alternative, that something on I-29 had reached into my truck and tried to freeze me solid, was impossible. But I knew the truth, and I wasn't the only one. On my second day in the hospital, a state trooper came to see me. His name was Officer Hernandez, and he looked tired, older than his 40-something years, like he'd seen things that aged him faster than time should have. He pulled up a chair next to my bed and sat down without asking permission. "Mr. Reeves, Tommy, I need to ask you some questions about what happened on I-29. "I already gave my statement," I said, "to the paramedics and the ER doctor." "I know, but those statements don't make sense. You said the road was frozen, that there were shapes outside your truck, that other drivers were telling you to keep moving. That's what happened. The problem is we can't verify any of it. The other trucks you mentioned, the ones stopped on the shoulder, we found all of them. 23 trucks total between the Iowa border and Sioux Falls. And all of them were empty." I stared at him. Empty? No drivers, no bodies, just trucks sitting on the shoulder with the engines running and the cabs locked from the inside, like the drivers just vanished. My throat went dry. "That's not possible." "No, it's not, but it happened. And here's the thing that really bothers me. According to the logbooks and GPS data, all 23 trucks stopped within a 2-hour window, between 8 and 10 a.m. on February 14th, all of them traveling northbound, all of them within a 30-mile stretch of highway. What about the CB conversations? I talked to them, Nighthawk, Grizzly, Ironside. We pulled the CB recordings from the highway patrol monitoring stations. There were no conversations during that time period on any of the standard channels, just normal traffic chatter. But I heard them, I talked to them." Hernandez leaned forward. "I believe you heard something, Tommy. I'm just not sure it was what you think it was. What's that supposed to mean?" He was quiet for a moment, studying me. Then he said, "How much do you know about I-29's history? It's a highway, goes from Kansas City to Canada. What else is there to know? There have been incidents, over the years. Drivers stopping for no reason. Trucks found abandoned. People disappearing. It doesn't happen often, maybe once or twice a year. But it's been happening for a long time, decades. And it always happens in winter, always on clear days, always when the weather report says the roads are safe." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You're saying this has happened before?" "Many times. Usually it's just one truck, one driver. But every few years there's an event like what happened yesterday. Multiple trucks, multiple disappearances. We never find the drivers. We never find evidence of foul play. They're just gone. And you think what? That I-29 is haunted? That there's some kind of ghost ice that steals truck drivers? I think there's something wrong with that highway. Something that doesn't show up on weather reports or traffic cameras. Something that only manifests under specific conditions. He pulled out a folder and opened it. I've been investigating these incidents for 6 years now, since I was assigned to the highway patrol. I've found patterns, dates, times, weather conditions, and I found something else. He showed me a photograph. It was grainy and old, black and white, a newspaper clipping from 1967. Mystery on Highway 29, the headline read. 6 trucks found empty, drivers missing. The article described an incident almost identical to what had happened yesterday. 6 trucks stopped on the shoulder over a 20-mile stretch. All engines running, all locked from the inside. All drivers gone without a trace. February 12, 1967, Hernandez said. Clear weather. Temperature in the low 20s. No precipitation. He showed me another article. 1979, 4 trucks. February 15th, clear weather. Another. 1980, 8 trucks. February 18th, clear weather. Another, 1996, 3 trucks. February 11th, clear weather. Do you see the pattern? He asked. February. It always happens in February. Not just February. Mid-February specifically. Between the 10th and the 20th, and always when the weather is clear. Never when there's actual snow or ice on the road. It's like, whatever this is, it doesn't need real winter conditions. It creates its own. I thought about the glass-like road surface, the cold radiating through my floorboard, the ice forming inside my cab despite the heater running full blast. What do you think it is? I don't know, but I think it's connected to an accident that happened in 1954, before I-29 was even built. This area used to be served by a smaller highway, U.S. Route 75. On February 14, 1954, there was a freak ice storm. Temperatures dropped from 40 degrees to below zero in less than an hour. Black ice formed on the highway so fast that drivers didn't have time to react. There was a massive pileup, 27 vehicles. 33 people died, including a dozen truck drivers. He showed me another newspaper clipping. This one had photos. Twisted metal, overturned trucks, bodies covered with sheets. And in the background of one photo you could see the highway. The ice on it looked strange. Too smooth, too perfect. Like glass. Just like the section of I-29 I'd driven over yesterday. They say the ice that day wasn't normal, Hernandez continued. Multiple witnesses described it as appearing out of nowhere. As being impossibly slippery, like driving on a skating rink. One survivor said it felt like the road was trying to hold them there, to keep them from leaving. And you think, what? That the ice from 1954 is still there? That it's haunted or cursed or something? I think something happened that day. Something that left a mark on this area. And every February, when conditions are right, that mark becomes visible again. Or invisible, I suppose. That's the whole problem. You can't see it. It looks like a normal road, right up until you're on it. I remembered Nighthawk's voice. This is the ice you don't see. What about the drivers? I asked. The missing ones. Where do they go? Hernandez closed the folder. I don't know. I have theories, but nothing I can prove. Some people think they're dead, that their bodies are somehow hidden or absorbed by whatever this thing is. Others think they're still out there somewhere, trapped, lost in some version of that highway that exists outside normal space. That's insane. Yes, it is, but insane doesn't make it untrue. He stood up. You're lucky, Tommy. You're one of the few people who've encountered this and survived. Most drivers either avoid it entirely or they don't come back. The fact that you're here talking to me means you did something right. I didn't do anything. I just sat there and waited to die. But you didn't open the door. The others told you to let them in, didn't they? To open up and join them. I stared at him. How do you know that? Because that's what survivors always report. That they heard voices, saw shapes, felt compelled to open their doors and get out. But the ones who survived didn't. They stayed inside, stayed separate, and eventually, whatever this thing is, it let them go. Why? I don't know. Maybe it only wants willing participants. Maybe it needs you to choose it, or maybe... He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Maybe what? Maybe it's saving them for later, for next time. Building up its collection slowly, one driver at a time, until it has enough to do something bigger. The thought made my skin crawl. That's a comforting theory. I'm not trying to comfort you. I'm trying to warn you. This isn't over, Tommy. You've been marked now. You've encountered it and survived, which means it knows about you. It'll try again. Try again how? I'm never driving I-29 again. I'm never going near that highway. It doesn't matter. It found you once. It can find you again. Different highway, different time, but the same ice, the same cold, the same voices telling you to stop, to join them. You're saying it'll follow me? I'm saying you need to be careful, especially in winter, especially on clear days when the weather report says everything's fine. That's when it happens. That's when it takes people. He left his card on the table next to my bed. Call me if anything strange happens. If you see things, feel things, hear things, don't try to handle it alone. Then he left, and I was alone with my thoughts and the steady beep of the heart monitor. I was released from the hospital the next day with instructions to rest, stay warm, and follow up with my doctor in a week. Rita had arranged for someone to pick up my truck. It was still sitting on I-29, frozen to the road. Apparently, it took them 6 hours in a flatbed to move it. The tires had been frozen solid to the asphalt, or to the ice, or to whatever that surface was. I took a cab back to Omaha. The drive took me south on different highways, avoiding I-29 completely. I watched the landscape roll by and tried not to think about the 23 missing drivers, about where they were, about what had happened to them after they opened their doors and let the cold in. My apartment felt safe, warm, normal. I cranked the heat up to 75 even though it was probably excessive. I couldn't help it. After spending 3 hours freezing in my truck, I never wanted to be cold again. I called Rita and told her I was taking a week off. She understood, didn't push. Said the company would cover my medical expenses and that my truck would be ready when I was ready to drive again. But I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready. I spent the next few days researching, reading everything I could find about I-29, about the accidents, about the missing drivers. Hernandez had been right. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. February, clear weather, northbound traffic, trucks stopping for no reason, drivers vanishing. It had been happening for 70 years, and I'd survived it. Why? What made me different from the others? Was it just luck, or had something chosen to let me go? On the 4th day, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Tommy? A woman's voice, shaky, scared. Who is this? My name is Lisa Martinez. I got your number from Officer Hernandez. He said you might be able to help me. Help you with what? My husband. He's a truck driver. He disappeared on I-29 3 years ago, February 16th, clear weather. They found his truck on the shoulder, but he was gone. I've been trying to find out what happened to him ever since. And Officer Hernandez told me about you. About what happened to you. He said you survived something that took my husband. My throat tightened. I'm sorry about your husband, but I don't know if I can help. I don't understand what happened to me, let alone what happened to him. Please, just talk to me. Tell me what you saw, what you experienced. The police won't tell me anything except that he's missing. But I know it's more than that. I know something happened to him on that highway. Something wrong. I sat down heavily on my couch. What do you want to know? Did you see them, the other drivers? The ones who disappeared? I heard them on the CB, talking about the cold, about needing to stop. And then later, after I stopped, I saw shapes outside my truck. I think they were the drivers, or what was left of them. Silence, then barely a whisper. Were they dead? I don't know. They moved, they talked, but they weren't alive either, not really. They were frozen, trapped in the ice somehow. Could they leave? Could they go somewhere else? Somewhere not on the highway? I don't think so. They seemed bound to that place, to that stretch of road, like they couldn't move beyond it. So he's still there. It wasn't a question. My husband is still there, on I-29, trapped in the ice. Maybe, I don't know. But Miss Martinez, Lisa, I don't think you should go looking for him. I don't think it's safe. I have to. He's been there for 3 years, Tommy. 3 years in the cold. I have to at least try to find him, to help him. There's nothing you can do. Whatever this thing is, it's not something you can fight. It's too big, too old, too patient. I don't care. He's my husband. I'm not leaving him there. Before I could respond, she hung up. I tried calling her back, but the number went to voicemail. I left a message telling her to call me, to please not do anything rash, to talk to Officer Hernandez before making any decisions. But I had a sinking feeling she wasn't going to listen. 2 days later, I got another call. This time, it was Hernandez. Tommy, I need to tell you something. Lisa Martinez is missing. My stomach dropped. What? She drove up to I-29 yesterday, alone. Security cameras caught her car entering the highway around noon. Clear weather, temperature in the low 20s. She was heading northbound toward the area where her husband's truck was found. She never made it to the next exit. Oh God. We found her car this morning. Pulled over on the shoulder. Engine running. Doors locked from the inside. She's gone, Tommy, just like her husband. Just like all the others. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This was my fault. I'd told her about the ice, about the drivers trapped there. I'd given her hope that her husband might still be somehow alive, and that hope had killed her. There's something else, Hernandez said. Before she disappeared, she called me, left a voicemail. She said she'd figured out the pattern, said she knew when and where the ice would appear next. When? February 19th, that's tomorrow. And Tommy, she said it wouldn't just be I-29 this time. She said it was spreading. That the ice was appearing on other highways, other routes. That it was getting stronger. How would she know that? I don't know, but I believe her. I've been tracking temperature patterns and truck disappearances across the Midwest. There's been an uptick in the last few years. More incidents, more missing drivers, and they're not all on I-29 anymore. I-35 in Iowa, Highway 71 in Missouri, Route 81 in Nebraska. It's spreading, Tommy, growing, like it's building toward something. Toward what? I don't know. But February 19th is tomorrow, and I think whatever this thing is, it's going to make another move, a big one. And I need your help. My help? What can I possibly do? You survived it. That makes you valuable. You know what it feels like. What it looks like, how it operates. I need you to help me track it, to find it before it takes more drivers. You want me to go back out there? Back to I-29? Not I-29. Somewhere else. I-80 in Iowa, near Des Moines. There have been reports of trucks slowing down for no reason. Drivers reporting unusual cold in their cabs. I think that's where it'll manifest next. And if it does, what's your plan? How do you fight ice that isn't really ice? I don't know yet, but I know we can't just let it keep taking people. 23 drivers disappeared in one day, Tommy. 23. If Lisa was right, if it's getting stronger, the next event could be even worse. I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him I was done with this. That I'd barely survived the first time and I wasn't stupid enough to go back for a second round. But I thought about Lisa, about her husband, about all the drivers trapped in the ice, frozen and lost and alone. Okay, I said. I'll help. But we do this smart. We don't stop. We don't slow down. We keep moving no matter what. Agreed. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Bring warm clothes. And Tommy, don't drive alone between now and then. If you need to go somewhere, take a cab or get a ride. Don't get in a truck. He hung up. I sat there in my warm apartment, looking out at the gray February sky, and wondered if I'd just agreed to my own death. Tomorrow was February 19th. The day Lisa Martinez had predicted. The day the ice would come back. And this time, I was going to be ready for it. Or at least, I was going to try. Hernandez picked me up at 5:47 a.m. in an unmarked highway patrol SUV. He looked like he hadn't slept. There were dark circles under his eyes and his uniform was wrinkled, like he'd been wearing it for days. "Morning," he said as I climbed in. "Coffee's in the back seat. You'll want it." I grabbed the thermos and poured myself a cup. It was strong and bitter and exactly what I needed. "Where are we going?" I-80, just west of Des Moines. We'd been monitoring CB chatter and dispatch calls all night. 3 trucks reported unusual conditions in that area around 3 a.m. Cold cabs. Strange feelings. 2 of them pulled over and refused to keep driving. The third one hasn't checked in for 2 hours. You think it started? I think it never stopped. We just notice it more when multiple drivers go missing at once. But I think it's always there, always hunting, just usually more subtle about it. We drove in silence for a while, heading west on I-80 as the sun started to come up. The sky was that brilliant winter blue again, clear, cold, endless. Weather forecast was the same as 5 days ago. No precipitation, light winds, temperature in the low 20s. Perfect driving conditions. Perfect hunting conditions. Around 7:30 we crossed into Iowa. Hernandez had a laptop open on the passenger seat, monitoring something. Highway traffic cameras, I realized. He could see live feeds from dozens of cameras along I-80. "There," he said, pointing at the screen. "See that truck?" I leaned over. On the screen I could see a semi approaching a bridge. Nothing unusual about it at first, but as it started across the bridge, it began to slow. Not dramatically, just a gradual deceleration from 65 to 50 to 40. "He's stopping," I said. "Watch." The truck came to a complete stop right in the middle of the bridge. Sat there for maybe 30 seconds. Then, slowly, it started moving again. Accelerated back up to speed and continued on like nothing had happened. What the hell was that? That's what I've been seeing all night. Trucks slowing down on bridges and overpasses. Stopping for 30 seconds to a minute. Then continuing. Like they're testing them. Or the ice is testing them. Testing for what? I don't know. Maybe testing which drivers will panic. Which ones will try to flee. Which ones are weak enough to take. He switched camera views. But here's the thing. It's not just happening in one spot anymore. It's happening all along I-80. Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, Davenport. dozens of trucks experiencing the same thing. I felt cold despite the heater running full blast. It's learning, getting smarter, or getting ready for something bigger. That's what Lisa thought. She believed the individual disappearances were just the ice-building strength, collecting energy or whatever, and that every few years, when it had enough, it would make a major move, take multiple drivers at once. And you think today's that day? I think Lisa was right about the pattern. And if she was right about that, she might be right about the rest, too. We drove for another hour, Hernandez monitoring the cameras while I watched the highway ahead. The landscape was flat and frozen, typical Iowa in February. Dead brown fields stretching to the horizon, broken up by the occasional farmhouse or grain silo. Around 8:30, the CB radio crackled to life. A man's voice, tense and scared. "Breaker 19, this is Maverick eastbound on H80 at mile marker 217. Anyone else feeling this, the cold?" Another voice responded immediately. "Maverick, this is Bullet. Yeah, I'm feeling it too. Started about 5 minutes ago. My cab is freezing even with the heat on max." A third voice. "Saber here, same thing. Temperature's dropping fast. Anyone know what's causing it?" Hernandez grabbed the CB mic. "All drivers on I-80, this is Iowa State Patrol. If you're experiencing unusual cold in your cabs, do not stop. I repeat, do not stop your vehicles. Maintain speed and continue to your nearest exit." Silence. Then Maverick's voice came back. "Patrol, what's going on? This doesn't feel right. Just trust me, keep moving, don't stop for any reason." "Copy that." But I could hear the doubt in his voice, the fear, and I knew what was coming next. Another voice on the CB, female this time. "This is Phoenix, I can't..." Static. "Too cold, I have to..." More static. "Pulling over. Phoenix, do not stop," Hernandez shouted into the mic. "Stay in motion." No response, just static. Hernandez switched to a different camera view. It took him a few seconds to find the right one, but then we saw it. A truck, a reefer with a blue trailer, pulling onto the shoulder, coming to a stop. "No," Hernandez muttered. "No, no, no." We watched the screen. The truck just sat there, engine running, exactly like my truck had 5 days ago. Exactly like the 23 trucks before that. "How far are we from that location?" I asked. "Maybe 15 miles. Too far. By the time we get there..." Another voice on the CB. "This is Maverick. I'm stopping too. I can't feel my hands anymore. Something's wrong." Then Bullet. "Me too. The steering wheel is frozen. I can barely hold it." Then Saber. "Pulling over now. This isn't normal. This isn't..." One by one, the voices cut off. And on Hernandez's laptop screen, we watched the trucks appear on different cameras. All of them pulling over. All of them stopping. 8 trucks. 10. 15. "It's happening," Hernandez said. "All at once. All across I-80. It's taking them all. We have to do something." "What? Drive up to each truck and try to warm them up? This thing is operating on a scale we can't fight. It's everywhere at once. Then we need to figure out what it wants. Why it's doing this. It wants drivers, Tommy. That's all it wants. That's all it's ever wanted." I thought about the shapes I'd seen outside my truck, the frozen faces, the voices begging to be let in. But why? What does it do with them? Hernandez didn't answer. He was staring at his laptop screen, his face pale. I looked at the screen. All 15 trucks were visible on different camera views now, and around each truck shapes were appearing. Tall, thin figures made of ice and shadow, dozens of them, hundreds. All the drivers it had taken over the years, all the people trapped in the ice. They were all there, surrounding the stopped trucks, waiting. My God, Hernandez whispered. It's not just hunting, it's feeding. Feeding on what? On warmth, on life, on everything that makes us human. Look. He zoomed in on one of the camera views. The truck's exhaust was visible, but the vapor was wrong. Instead of rising normally, it was being pulled downward, toward the ground, toward the shapes surrounding the truck, like they were drinking it in, consuming it. It's draining them, I said, taking their heat, their energy, their lives. Yes, and when it's done, they'll be like the others, frozen, trapped, part of the ice forever. The CB crackled again, but this time it wasn't a trucker's voice. It was something else. Multiple voices speaking in unison, overlapping and echoing. Stop. Stop moving. Stop fighting. The cold is home. The ice is peace. Stop. Hernandez grabbed the mic. All drivers on I-80, do not listen to that broadcast. It's not real. Keep moving. Get to the nearest town and park somewhere safe. But I could hear other voices in the background now. Truckers responding to the strange broadcast. Some of them sounding confused, others sounding compliant, like they were being convinced. It's in their heads, I said, using the CB to get inside their heads. Then we need to shut it down, block the signal somehow. Hernandez pulled out his phone and made a call. This is Officer Hernandez, badge number 476. I need emergency authorization to jam CB frequencies on I-80 between Des Moines and Davenport. Yes, I understand it's illegal. Yes, I understand it's dangerous. But we have a mass casualty event in progress and... He listened for a moment, his face darkening. No, you don't understand. This isn't a standard... He pulled the phone away from his ear, staring at it. They hung up on me. Call someone else. Call the FBI. Call... It won't matter. By the time we convince anyone this is real, it'll be over. The drivers will be gone, just like all the others. He was right. We couldn't save them. Not from here, not in time. But maybe we could stop it at the source. The accident, I said. The one from 1954. Where did it happen? Hernandez looked at me. About 40 miles west of here. Why? Because that's where this started. That's where the ice learned it could do this. If we're going to stop it, that's where we need to go. Tommy, that was 70 years ago. The original highway doesn't even exist anymore. It's been paved over, rebuilt, rerouted. There's nothing left. The ice is left. It's still there. You said yourself it marked that place, left a scar. Well, scars can be healed, or cut out. How? I didn't know, but I knew we had to try. Drive. Take me there. Hernandez stared at me for a long moment. Then he put the SUV in gear and hit the accelerator. We were moving within seconds, exceeding the speed limit by a comfortable margin. As we drove, I watched the laptop screen. The stopped trucks were still there, surrounded by shapes. But something new was happening. The shapes were moving closer, pressing against the truck doors, trying to get in, and some of the doors were opening. I watched a driver, too far away to see details, just a silhouette, climb down from his cab. He stood there for a moment, swaying slightly. Then the shapes surrounded him, embraced him, and he disappeared into them. Became part of them. The truck's exhaust went dark. The engine died. And one more driver joined the ice. We're losing them, I said. I know. We're going as fast as we can. But it wasn't fast enough. More doors were opening. More drivers were giving in. The voice on the CB kept repeating its message, hypnotic and irresistible. Stop. The cold is home. The ice is peace. Stop. Then I had an idea. Give me the CB mic. What are you going to do? Fight back. If it can get in their heads, maybe I can too. I keyed the mic and spoke, trying to keep my voice steady and calm. "This is Tommy Reeves. If you're hearing this, if you're stopped on I-80 right now feeling cold and hearing voices, listen to me. Don't open your doors. Don't get out. I know it's cold. I know it feels like the only way to make it stop is to give in. But that's what it wants. It's lying to you. The cold isn't home. The ice isn't peace. It's a trap. And if you give in, you'll be stuck there forever." The CB hissed with static. Then the multiple voices came back, louder and angrier. "Lies! He lies! The warm one lies! We are peace! We are home! We are—" I keyed the mic again, talking over them. "I was where you are 5 days ago. Stopped on I-29, freezing in my cab, hearing the same voices you're hearing now. And I survived because I didn't listen. I didn't open my door. I stayed inside and waited, and eventually it let me go. You can survive too. Just stay inside, stay warm, stay alive." Silence. Then a new voice, shaky but human. "This is Maverick. I can hear you. Both of you. I don't know which one to believe." "Believe me," I said. "Because I'm real. I'm alive. I'm talking to you right now as a human being, not as whatever those things are. And I'm telling you the truth. If you open that door, you're done. You'll become one of them." Another voice. "This is Bullet. I believe you. I'm staying in my truck." Then Saber. "Me too. Not opening my door." The multiple voices on the CB rose to a shriek. "No, you must stop. You must join us. We are alone, so cold. We need you. We need—" I turned off the CB. The silence was immediate and blessed. "Will that be enough?" Hernandez asked. "I don't know, but maybe. Maybe just enough to buy us time." We were getting close now. Hernandez took an exit and followed a series of back roads until we reached an area that looked like it had once been a highway but was now just an abandoned strip of cracked pavement running through farmland. "This is it," he said. "The old Route 75. The accident happened right along this stretch, about half a mile ahead." We drove slowly, looking for what, I didn't know. A sign? A marker? Some indication of where 33 people had died 70 years ago? But there was nothing. Just old pavement and dead grass and February cold. Then I saw it. At first I thought it was just a section of road that had been repaved differently. But as we got closer, I realized it was the same glass-like surface I'd seen on I-29. The same perfectly smooth texture. The same wrong appearance. "Stop here," I said. Hernandez pulled over. We sat there, engine running, staring at the strange section of road ahead. "That's it?" I said. "That's where it happened." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen it before. That's what the ice looks like. That's its true form." I opened the door and started to get out. "Tommy, wait," but I was already out, standing on the shoulder, feeling the cold February air on my face. I walked toward the strange section of road. My boots crunched on frozen grass. My breath misted in the air. But I wasn't afraid, not anymore. Because I understood now. The ice wasn't evil. It wasn't malicious. It was just lonely. Desperately, impossibly lonely. 33 people had died here in 1954. Died in the cold. Died trapped in their vehicles. Died knowing they would never leave this place. And somehow, through cold or trauma, or some combination of both, they'd become part of the road, part of the ice. Forever frozen, forever trapped, forever alone. They didn't want to hurt anyone. They just wanted company. They wanted other drivers to stop, to stay, to join them so they wouldn't be alone anymore. I stood at the edge of the glass-like surface. Up close, I could see faces in it. Dozens of them. Hundreds. All the drivers taken over the years, preserved in the ice like insects in amber. And in the center, clearer than the others, I saw Lisa Martinez. She was looking up at me through the ice, her expression peaceful, almost happy. She'd found her husband. They were together now, together in the cold. I knelt down and placed my hand on the ice. It was cold, so cold it burned, but I didn't pull away. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry you're alone. I'm sorry you're trapped. But you can't keep doing this. You can't keep taking people. It has to stop." The ice beneath my hand rippled, like water disturbed by a stone, and a voice came from it. Not through my ears, but directly into my mind. "We don't want to be alone. Please, don't leave us alone." "I won't leave you alone, I promise. But you have to let the others go. The drivers you took today, the ones still in their trucks. Let them go." "We're so cold." "I know, but taking their warmth doesn't help. It just makes you colder, because warmth isn't something you can steal. It's something you have to share." The ice rippled again, more violently this time. Faces pressed up against the surface from below. Mouths opened in silent screams or pleas, or both. "Please," the voice said again. "Please don't make us be alone. You won't be alone. I'll come back. I'll visit. I'll talk to you. But you have to let them go." Silence then. "You'll come back? You promise?" "I promise." The ice beneath my hand went still. Then, slowly, it began to warm. Not much. It was still well below freezing, but enough that it no longer burned to touch. "We'll let them go," the voice said. "For you. Because you promised." I stood up and walked back to Hernandez's SUV. He was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. "What did you just do?" "I made a deal, check the cameras, see if it worked." He pulled up the laptop and switched through views. For a long moment he just stared, then, "They're moving, the trucks, they're all moving again." I looked at the screen. He was right. All 15 trucks that had stopped were back in motion, accelerating, getting back up to speed. The shapes around them were gone. The cold had released them. "You did it," Hernandez said. "You stopped it. How?" I asked nicely. He looked at me like he wanted to ask more questions, but didn't know where to start. Finally, he just said, "We should go. Make sure those drivers are okay." "Yeah, we should." But before we left, I looked back at the glass-like section of road one more time. The faces were still there, watching me, waiting. I'd made a promise, and I intended to keep it. I visit them once a month now. Drive out to that abandoned section of old Route 75 and spend an hour there just talking. I tell them about my life, about the places I've been, about the things I've seen. I tell them about other drivers, about the highways, about the weather. I tell them they're not alone. It seems to help. The disappearances on I-80 have stopped. So have the ones on I-29 and the other highways where the ice had been spreading. Officer Hernandez says it's the quietest winter he's seen in 6 years. The ice is still there. I can see it when I visit, that glass-like surface covering the old pavement. But it's dormant now, sleeping, waiting for my visits like a dog waiting for its owner to come home. The drivers I helped save never knew what really happened. They just remember experiencing extreme cold, pulling over, and then warming up again. They think it was some kind of mechanical issue or a weird weather phenomenon. The Highway Patrol filed reports about equipment malfunctions and temperature anomalies. Everyone's moving on with their lives. Except me, because I know the truth. and because I made a promise. Lisa Martinez's family held a funeral for her last month. They never recovered her body. It's still down there in the ice with her husband and all the others. But they needed closure. I attended the service. Didn't tell them what really happened to her. What would be the point? She's at peace now. She's with the person she loved. That's all they need to know. I still drive trucks, still haul freight across the Midwest. But I'm more careful now. I watch the weather reports closely. I avoid clear days in mid-February when possible. And I never stop on the highway unless I absolutely have to. Because even though I made a deal with the ice, even though I visit regularly, I don't fully trust it. The cold is patient. It waits. And someday, maybe years from now, maybe decades, it might decide that one visit per month isn't enough. That it needs more. That it needs me. I think about Tommy's story sometimes. The one Officer Hernandez told me about after everything was over. Tommy, the driver who'd been followed by headlights, who'd found frost on his window, who'd disappeared into the cold and never came back. I wonder if he visits them too, if he talks to them, if he keeps them company in whatever frozen space they inhabit. I wonder if I'll join him someday. Last week, I was driving through Nebraska on a clear February night. Temperature in the low 20s. No precipitation. Perfect conditions. I saw something in my rearview mirror, just for a second. 2 headlights maintaining an exact distance behind me. But when I looked again, they were gone. Maybe it was nothing. Another truck, another driver. Nothing unusual. But I don't think it was. I think it was a reminder. A message from the ice, telling me not to forget. Not to break my promise. Not to leave them alone, so I won't. I'll keep visiting, keep talking, keep sharing my warmth with the cold. Because the alternative is being down there with them. Frozen, trapped, part of the ice forever. And I'm not ready for that yet. Not today. But someday, maybe. Because the ice is patient, and the ice never forgets. And when you make a deal with the cold, it always, always collects. My name is Jake Holloway, and I've been running long haul for 9 years. Started right after high school, never looked back. Some people need college or the military to figure out what they want to do with their lives. Me? I just needed a truck and a highway that went somewhere far away from where I started. March 2nd was supposed to be a nothing day. A filler run. I was hauling appliances from Kansas City to Billings, Montana. Refrigerators and washing machines for a big box store. The load wasn't time sensitive. The weather was supposed to be clear, and the route was straightforward. I-29 north through South Dakota, then I-94 west into Montana. 12 hours of driving, maybe 13 with stops. I'd done longer runs on less sleep. I left Kansas City at 4 in the morning, while the sky was still dark and the city was still mostly asleep. The warehouse crew loaded me up quickly. They knew me, knew I didn't waste time with small talk or coffee breaks. By 4:32 a.m. I was on I-29, heading north, watching the city lights fade in my mirrors. The sun came up around 6:30, turning the sky from black to gray to that washed-out blue you get in early March. Not quite winter anymore, but not spring either. Just cold and empty and in between. The temperature was holding steady at 34 degrees, right at that edge where water doesn't know if it should freeze or stay liquid. I passed through Omaha around 8, didn't stop. Grabbed a quick breakfast at a truck stop outside Sioux City around 9:30. Egg sandwich and coffee. Ate it while fueling up. Back on the road by 9:40, making good time. No traffic to speak of, just the occasional car passing in the opposite direction and a few other semis scattered along the highway. The landscape was flat and dead, March in the northern plains isn't pretty. The snow's mostly melted, but nothing's growing yet. Just brown grass and bare trees and gray sky. The kind of scenery that makes you want to drive faster just to get through it quicker. Around 11, I crossed into South Dakota. The highway stretched out ahead of me, straight and empty. I could see for miles in every direction. No curves, no hills, no obstacles. Just road and sky and nothing. That's when I started to notice something strange. At first, I thought it was just the lack of traffic. But it was more than that. It was the complete absence of anything. No cars, no trucks, no buildings, no signs, just highway and dead grass extending to the horizon. I checked my odometer. I'd been driving for 7 hours. Should have seen at least a few towns by now. Gas stations, rest stops, something. But there was nothing, just empty road. I grabbed my CB radio. Breaker 19. This is Nomad northbound on I-29 in South Dakota. Anyone out there? Static, just endless static. I tried a few more channels, same thing. No voices, no chatter, just that empty hiss that fills the space when nobody's talking. I checked my phone. No signal, that wasn't unusual. There were dead zones all over this part of the country. But combined with the empty highway and the silent CB, it was starting to feel wrong. I passed a mile marker, 147. Okay. Good. At least I knew where I was. Sort of. I pulled out my atlas. Yeah, I still use paper maps. Don't trust GPS for everything. And tried to find mile marker 147 on I-29 in South Dakota. But the problem was, according to my atlas, there was no mile marker 147 on this stretch of highway. The markers jumped from 142 to 153. Like 11 miles of highway just didn't exist on paper. I checked the atlas again, thinking maybe I was reading it wrong. But no, the map was clear. This section of road shouldn't be here. What the hell? I muttered. I looked up at the highway ahead. It looked normal, 2 lanes northbound, 2 lanes southbound, divided by a median. Standard interstate construction. Nothing unusual about it except that it supposedly didn't exist. I kept driving. What else was I going to do? Turn around. Drive back to Kansas City and tell dispatch I couldn't complete the run because my map said the highway wasn't real. Another mile marker appeared. 148. Then 149. Then 150. The highway kept existing, even though my map said it shouldn't. Around noon, I passed a sign that said Brookings, 47 miles. Okay, good. Brookings was a real town. I'd been there before. That meant I was still on I-29, still heading in the right direction, still in reality. Except when I checked my atlas, Brookings should have been 60 miles away, not 47. I'd covered 13 miles I shouldn't have been able to cover. Or the mile markers were wrong. Or something else was wrong that I wasn't understanding yet. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I was just tired. I'd only gotten about 4 hours of sleep before this run. Maybe I was misreading the map. Maybe I was more exhausted than I realized. But I didn't feel tired. I felt alert, awake. My hands were steady on the wheel. My vision was clear. My thoughts were sharp. I wasn't experiencing any of the warning signs of fatigue. I was just driving through miles of highway that shouldn't exist, heading toward a town that was 13 miles closer than it should be. The temperature gauge on my dash read 32 degrees, exactly freezing. The point where water becomes ice. I glanced at my mirrors. Still no traffic behind me. No traffic ahead. Just me and the empty road. Then I saw something that made me slow down. There was a truck pulled over on the shoulder, about half a mile ahead. A semi parked with its flashers on. As I got closer, I could see it was an older Peterbilt, maybe early 2000s, with a dry van trailer. Nothing unusual about it except that it was stopped in the middle of nowhere with no town or rest stop in sight. I thought about pulling over to see if the driver needed help. That's what you're supposed to do. Truckers look out for each other. But something made me hesitate. Something about the way the truck was sitting there felt wrong. I slowed to 40 miles per hour as I approached. The truck's engine was running. I could see the exhaust vapor rising from the stack. The flashers were on, blinking in steady rhythm. But there was no driver visible in the cab, no one standing outside, no sign of what the problem was. I grabbed my CB again. Breaker 19, this is Nomad calling the driver of the Peterbilt on the shoulder at mile marker 153. You need assistance? Static. No response. I was right alongside the truck now. I looked over at the cab. The driver's side door was closed. The windows looked fogged up from the inside, like the heat was running, but there was a lot of moisture in the cab. Something was written on the driver's side window, written in the fog from the inside, like someone had used their finger to trace letters on the glass. I couldn't read it from the road. Would have had to pull over, walk back, get close enough to see. But I didn't pull over. That feeling of wrongness was too strong. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to keep moving, keep driving, don't stop. So I accelerated back up to 65 and left the Peterbilt behind. But I kept checking my mirrors, watching it disappear into the distance. And just before it vanished completely, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The flashers stopped blinking. The exhaust vapor stopped rising. The truck went completely dark and still, like someone had turned off a switch, like it had only been running because I was there to see it. And now that I was gone, it didn't need to pretend anymore. I faced forward and focused on the road ahead. My hands were tight on the steering wheel. My heart was beating faster than it should. Something was wrong with this highway, with this day, with this entire run. But I didn't know what, and I didn't know how to fix it. Around 12:30, I should have been approaching Brookings, should have been seeing signs for exits and services, should have been passing through civilization. But there was nothing. Just more empty highway, more dead grass, more gray sky, and no sign of Brookings anywhere. I checked the mile markers. 168, 169, 170. According to my original calculation, Brookings should have been at mile marker 164. But I'd passed that 10 minutes ago, and there had been nothing there. Had I missed it somehow? Driven through without noticing? That didn't seem possible. Brookings wasn't a big city, but it was big enough that you couldn't just miss it. Unless it wasn't there. Unless I wasn't on the highway I thought I was on. I grabbed my phone. Still no signal. Tried the CB again. Still just static. I was alone out here, completely alone. And I was starting to suspect I wasn't where I thought I was. The temperature gauge still read 32 degrees. Exactly freezing. It had been holding at that exact temperature for over an hour now. Didn't matter that the sun was out. Didn't matter that the day should have been warming up. The temperature stayed locked at 32, the freezing point. I looked at the road ahead. It looked normal. Dark asphalt. White lines clear and dry. No ice. No snow. No visible hazards. But something about the surface was bothering me. It was too consistent. Too uniform. Most highways have variations. Patches where they've done repairs. Sections that are newer or older. Places where the asphalt is lighter or darker. But this highway looked exactly the same for as far as I could see. The same color. The same texture. The same perfect uniformity. Like it had all been poured at once. Or like it wasn't really asphalt at all. I eased off the accelerator, letting my speed drop to 50. Then 40. I wanted to see if the road would change. If something would happen. If the illusion, if that's what this was, would crack. but nothing changed. The road just kept coming, meter after meter, mile after mile, perfectly uniform and unchanging. I sped back up to 60. Still nothing changed. Around 1 o'clock, I saw another truck ahead of me. This one wasn't pulled over. It was moving, heading north just like me. Same direction, same highway, maybe a mile ahead. Relief flooded through me. I wasn't alone. There was someone else out here. Someone who could tell me what was going on. Someone who could confirm I wasn't losing my mind. I accelerated to close the distance. 65, 70, 75. The truck ahead should have been getting closer, but it wasn't. The distance between us stayed exactly the same. I pushed harder, 80 miles per hour faster than I should have been going with a full load. But the other truck stayed a mile ahead, never getting closer, never falling back. I eased off the accelerator, dropping back to 60. And the other truck slowed too, maintaining that exact 1 mile distance. It wasn't driving away from me. It was staying ahead of me, deliberately, like it was leading me somewhere, or leading me away from somewhere. I tried the CB one more time. Breaker 19, this is Nomad calling the northbound truck ahead of me on I-29. Do you copy? For a long moment, just static. Then, cutting through the noise, a voice. Distorted, wrong, like it was coming from very far away or through very old equipment. Turn back. I grabbed the mic. Say again, I didn't copy. Turn back. This road doesn't go where you think it goes. Where does it go? Nowhere, everywhere, the same place. Turn back while you still can. Who is this? What's your handle? Static. Then the voice again, even more distorted. I'm what happens when you don't turn back. I'm what happens when you keep driving. Turn back, please, before it's too late. The radio went dead. Not static. Complete silence. Like the CB had been unplugged. I looked ahead. The other truck was still there, still maintaining that 1 mile distance. Still leading me north on a highway that supposedly didn't exist toward a town that should have been there, but wasn't. And I had a choice to make. Turn back. Find the last exit I'd passed, which had been over an hour ago, and get off this highway. Abandon the load. Face the questions from dispatch. Deal with the consequences. Or keep driving. Keep following the truck ahead. Keep heading north on this impossible road and find out where it actually went. I should have turned back. Any rational person would have turned back. But I'm not always rational, and I needed to know. So I kept driving. The temperature gauge still read 32 degrees. The road still stretched ahead, perfectly uniform and unchanging. And the truck ahead stayed exactly 1 mile in front of me, leading me deeper into whatever this was. Around 2 o'clock, the sun started to dim, not like clouds were covering it. There were no clouds in the sky. It just got darker. The light got flatter, the shadows got longer, and the temperature gauge dropped to 31 degrees. Then 30, then 29. The road was getting colder. I could feel it through the floor of my cab, through the steering wheel. That same cold I'd heard other drivers talk about on the forums. The cold that came from the road itself. Black ice, that's what they called it. But this was something else, something worse. This was the road itself turning to ice, becoming ice, being ice. The truck ahead of me started to slow. I checked my speedometer. I was still doing 60, but the distance between us was shrinking. The other truck was dropping back, or I was catching up, or time and distance were getting confused. Half a mile now, then a quarter mile, then 500 feet. Close enough to see details. The truck was a Kenworth, older model, with a white trailer that looked like it had seen better days. The license plate was covered in road grime. I couldn't read it. 300 feet, 200. Close enough now that I should have been able to see the driver in the side mirror. But the mirror just showed darkness. Like there was nothing in the cab, or like the cab existed in a different place than the rest of the truck. 100 feet. And then the truck vanished. Not gradually, not fading away, just gone. 1 second it was right in front of me, close enough to touch if I'd been outside the cab. The next second the road ahead was empty. I slammed on my brakes instinctively. My truck slowed, tires gripping the road normally. No slide, no loss of control, just a normal stop. I sat there, engine idling, staring at the empty highway ahead. My heart was pounding. My breath was coming fast and shallow. The truck hadn't exited, hadn't turned off, hadn't crashed. It had just stopped existing. And if it could stop existing, what did that mean for me? I looked in my mirrors. The highway behind me was empty too. No traffic, no signs, no landmarks. Just road disappearing into the distance. I looked ahead. Same thing. Empty road extending to the horizon. I was alone on a highway that didn't exist, chasing a truck that had vanished, heading toward a destination I would never reach. And the temperature gauge now read 25 degrees. The freezing point was behind me. I was in real cold now, ice-forming cold, black ice cold. I had to make another decision. Stop here and wait for, what? Help? An explanation? The universe to make sense again. Or keep driving, keep moving. Because every trucker knows that when you're on black ice, the worst thing you can do is stop. I put the truck in gear and pressed down on the accelerator. The wheels turned, the truck moved forward, the road kept coming. But I had the distinct sensation that I wasn't going anywhere at all, that I was just staying in place while the highway moved beneath me, like a treadmill or a trap. And somewhere behind me, or ahead of me, or all around me, something was watching, waiting, patient, hungry. The mile markers stopped making sense after the truck vanished. They'd go up normally, 172, 173, 174, and then suddenly jump back to 167. Or skip ahead to 182. Or repeat the same number 3 times in a row. I tried to keep track of my position using my odometer and the time, but that didn't help. According to my calculations, I should have been in Fargo by now, but there was no Fargo, just more highway. The temperature kept dropping. 23 degrees, 20, 18. My breath was starting to fog inside the cab even with the heater running full blast. Around 3 o'clock, or what I thought was 3 o'clock, my phone had frozen and the clock wasn't updating, I saw a sign ahead. The first sign I'd seen in hours. It said, "Rest area, 2 miles." A rest area, civilization. Bathrooms and vending machines and maybe another person who could tell me what the hell was going on. I accelerated slightly, watching for the rest area exit. The sign said 2 miles. I drove 3 miles, 4, 5. No exit appeared. Then I saw the sign again. Rest area, 2 miles. Same sign, same exact position on the right side of the road. I'd looped back somehow, driven in a circle without realizing it. Or the highway had looped underneath me. I kept driving. The sign appeared again 5 minutes later. Rest area, 2 miles. And again 5 minutes after that. And again. I was trapped in a loop. Driving the same section of highway over and over, seeing the same sign, never getting any closer to the rest area that either didn't exist or couldn't be reached. I tried to break the pattern, slowed down to 30 miles per hour. The sign still appeared at the same intervals. Sped up to 80, same thing. The distance I traveled didn't matter. The highway would just loop back on itself, unless I wasn't traveling any distance at all. unless I was just sitting in one place while the illusion of movement played out around me. The temperature gauge read 15 degrees now, well below freezing, ice cold. I noticed that the road surface was starting to look different. Not icy, not wet or shiny or obviously frozen, but the texture was changing, getting smoother, more uniform, like it was being worn down by something, or like it was transforming into something else. I thought about the black ice reports I'd read, the ones that described ice that didn't look like ice, that appeared on clear days with good visibility, that trapped trucks and drivers without warning. This was it. I was on it. I'd been driving on it for hours without realizing, and now I couldn't get off. The CB radio crackled to life suddenly, making me jump. The voice was the same distorted one from before. "You should have turned back." I grabbed the mic. "Who are you? What is this place?" "This is nowhere. This is the miles between miles. The road that exists in the gaps." "That doesn't make sense." "None of this makes sense, but it's real. And you're here. And now you can't leave. Why not? What's stopping me?" "The ice. It has you now. It won't let go. There is no ice. The road is clear." Silence. Then a sound that might have been laughter or might have been static. "The road is ice. Has been since you passed mile marker 147. Everything after that point is ice. Frozen road that looks like asphalt. Feels like asphalt, but isn't asphalt. You've been driving on pure ice for hours, and ice doesn't let go." I looked down at my wheels through the driver's side window. They were rolling normally, gripping the surface. If I was on ice, I should be sliding, losing control. But everything felt normal. If it's ice, why aren't I sliding? Because this ice doesn't work like normal ice. It doesn't make you slide. It makes you stick, holds you in place, keeps you driving in circles while it decides what to do with you. Decides what? Whether to keep you or let you go, or make you part of it. Part of the ice? Part of the highway. Like me, like the others. We're all here, driving in circles, never arriving, never leaving. Just moving because that's what we do, because that's what the ice wants. I looked in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see something, but there was nothing. Just empty road. How many others? Dozens, maybe hundreds. Hard to keep count. Time doesn't work right here. Some drivers have been here for days, some for years, some for decades. That's impossible. So is a highway that doesn't exist on maps. So is mile markers that repeat. So is ice that looks like asphalt. But here you are. The radio cut out again. I tried calling back but got nothing except static. I kept driving. What else could I do? The sign appeared again. Rest area 2 miles. I was starting to recognize specific features of the road now. A particular crack in the shoulder about 50 feet before the sign. A slight discoloration in the asphalt about a quarter mile after it. I was definitely looping, driving the same 5-mile section over and over. How many times had I driven it now? 10, 20, 50? I tried to keep count using my fuel gauge. Each loop used a certain amount of fuel. If I tracked the drops in fuel level, I could figure out how many loops I'd done. But the fuel gauge wasn't moving. I'd been driving for hours, should have used at least a quarter tank, but the needle stayed exactly where it had been when I left Kansas City, because I wasn't using fuel, wasn't actually moving, just existing in this frozen loop while the ice decided what to do with me. The temperature gauge read 10 degrees. My fingers were starting to go numb on the steering wheel. I turned the heater up to maximum, but it didn't help. The cold was coming from outside, from the road, from the ice. I saw something ahead, not the sign this time, something else, a vehicle. It was the same Peterbilt I'd passed hours ago, the one with the fogged windows and the message written on the glass. but it wasn't on the shoulder anymore. It was in my lane, sitting dead center in the right lane, completely still. I slowed down as I approached. The truck's flashers weren't on now. No exhaust vapor rising from the stack. It looked dead, abandoned, frozen. As I drew alongside it, I could finally see what was written on the driver's side window. 3 words traced in the fog: "Never stops moving." I was past it before I could fully process what that meant. In my mirror, I watched the Peterbilt fade into the distance. Then it vanished, just like the Kenworth had. But I understood now. The driver had written that message as a warning, or a statement of fact, or both. The ice never stops moving. It keeps you driving, keeps you in motion. Because if you stop, something worse happens, something final. So the driver in that Peterbilt had kept moving until they couldn't anymore. Until they'd frozen in place, until they'd become part of the ice themselves. And that's what would happen to me if I stopped. I had to keep moving, no matter what. No matter how tired I got, or how cold it became, or how many times I drove the same 5-mile loop. I had to keep moving. The sign appeared again. Rest area, 2 miles. I passed the crack in the shoulder, the discoloration in the asphalt, the spot where the Peterbilt would appear in another few minutes. Loop after loop after loop. The temperature gauge read 5 degrees. My teeth were chattering. I was shivering despite my heavy jacket. The cold was inside me now, in my bones, in my blood. How long could I keep this up? How long before I ran out of fuel, real fuel, not the illusion of fuel? How long before exhaustion took me? How long before the cold won? The CB crackled. "You're thinking about stopping?" "No," I said out loud, not bothering with the mic. "I'm not stopping." Everyone thinks about stopping eventually. The cold gets to be too much. The boredom, the repetition. They think maybe if they just stop for a minute, just rest for a second, things will get better. But they don't. No, they don't. When you stop, the ice takes you completely, makes you part of it. You become another frozen truck on the side of a road that doesn't exist. Another warning that other drivers won't understand. So, what do? Keep driving. That's all you can do. Drive and hope. Hope for what? Hope that you're strong enough. Hope that the ice gets bored. Hope that you find the crack. What crack? Every loop has a crack, a weak point, a moment where the ice isn't paying attention. If you can find it, you can break through, escape, get back to the real highway. How do I find it? I don't know, I never did, but some drivers have. I've heard their voices fade away on the CB, heard them break through to the other side, so I know it's possible. How long have you been here? Silence, long enough that I thought the connection had cut out again. Then, I don't remember. Long enough that I can't remember what the real world looks like. Long enough that I'm not sure I'm even still driving. Maybe I stopped years ago. Maybe I'm frozen in that Peterbilt you keep seeing. Maybe I'm just a ghost on the radio, warning other drivers about a fate I've already suffered. The radio went silent. I kept driving. The sign, rest area, 2 miles. The crack in the shoulder, the discoloration, the spot where the Peterbilt would appear. Except this time it didn't appear. This time there was something else. A gap in the highway. Not a hole or a break in the pavement. Just a shimmer in the air. A place where the road looked slightly different. Less solid. More translucent. A crack. I aimed for it, pressing down on the accelerator. 65, 70, 75. The gap was approaching fast. I had one chance to hit it right, to punch through whatever barrier existed there. 80 miles per hour. The truck was shaking, the load was shifting, but I didn't ease off. The gap was right in front of me now. I could see through it, to what looked like normal highway beyond. Real asphalt, real sky, real world. I hit the gap at 82 miles per hour. There was a sensation like driving through a waterfall. Everything went white for a second. Then I was through. The temperature gauge jumped from 5 degrees to 34. The mile markers were back in sequence. 175, 176, 177. My phone came back to life, showing the time. 3:47 p.m. Only a few hours had passed in the real world, even though it felt like I'd been driving for days. I eased off the accelerator, letting my speed drop to 65. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. I'd made it out. I'd found the crack and broken through. I was back on the real I-29, heading north like nothing had happened. But I knew something had happened. I'd been to a place between places, a highway that existed in the gaps, and I'd barely escaped. The CB crackled one more time. The distorted voice, fainter now. You made it. Good. But be careful, the ice doesn't forget. And black ice never cracks, not permanently, it heals itself. And next time you drive past mile marker 147, it'll be waiting. Then, silence. I drove for another 2 hours before I started seeing signs of civilization. Towns, gas stations, other vehicles on the road. I pulled into a truck stop outside Fargo and sat in my cab for 20 minutes, just breathing. Just being grateful to be somewhere real. A knock on my door made me jump. I looked over to see another driver standing there, concerned expression on his face. I rolled down the window. Yeah? You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, just tired. He looked at my truck, frowning. How long you been driving today? Since 4 this morning. Might want to check your tires. Your treads look weird, like they've been worn down by something abrasive. I climbed down and looked. He was right. My tires looked like they'd been driving on sandpaper, or ice. The rubber was scored with thousands of tiny scratches all running parallel. What the hell would do that? The other driver asked. I don't know, I lied, but I knew. The ice had left its mark. A reminder, a warning. Black ice never cracks. Not permanently. And I'd just driven across miles of it. I should have refused the next run. Should have told dispatch I needed time off. Should have found a different route. Different highway, different anything. But I didn't. Because 3 weeks after my first encounter with the loop, dispatch called with another load to Billings. Same route, same highway, and I said yes. I told myself it would be different this time. I'd be prepared. I'd watch for the signs. I'd know when I was entering the ice and I'd be able to avoid it. But the truth was simpler and stupider. I needed to know if it was real, if that loop had actually happened, or if it had been some kind of hallucination brought on by exhaustion or carbon monoxide poisoning or a brain tumor. I needed to know if the ice was real. So on March 23rd, I left Kansas City at 4 in the morning with another load of appliances. Same start time, same route, same everything. This time, I was paying attention. I crossed into South Dakota around 11. The weather was clear. 36 degrees, light winds, good visibility. Normal conditions. Safe conditions. I watched the mile markers carefully as they went by. 140, 141, 142. My atlas said the markers should jump from 142 to 153. That the miles in between didn't exist on paper. 143 appeared right on schedule. Then 144. I held my breath, waiting for something to change, for the highway to shift, for the loop to begin. But nothing happened. The highway stayed normal. Traffic was light but present. I could see other vehicles ahead and behind me. The temperature gauge held steady at 36 degrees. My phone had signal. I passed 148, 49, 150. Still nothing unusual. Relief flooded through me. It had been a hallucination, a one-time thing, a glitch in my exhausted brain. The loop wasn't real. The ice wasn't real. I was fine, except I wasn't fine. Because, as I approached mile marker 155, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a truck on the shoulder, a Peterbilt, older model, same truck I'd seen in the loop, and on the driver's side window, visible even from the highway, were 3 words traced in fog: "Never stops moving." I slowed down despite myself. The truck looked exactly the same as it had in the loop. Flashers off. No exhaust. Completely still. But this time there was something different. The driver's door was open. I pulled onto the shoulder about 100 feet behind the Peterbilt and put my truck in park. Every instinct told me not to, told me to keep moving, but I had to know. I climbed down and walked toward the Peterbilt. The air was cold despite the sun. 36 degrees according to my truck, but it felt colder, like the cold was coming from the Peterbilt itself. As I got closer, I could see the interior of the cab. The driver's seat was empty. The key was in the ignition, turned to the off position. Everything looked normal except for one thing. There was ice on the dashboard. A thin layer of frost coating every surface inside the cab, and the temperature outside was above freezing. I looked at the message on the window. Up close, I could see it had been traced from the inside, by the driver, before they'd gotten out, or before something had made them get out. I heard a sound behind me, a footstep. I spun around. Nothing, just empty highway. But the sound came again. Closer this time, the crunch of boots on gravel, except there was no gravel here, just frozen grass. The crunch of boots on ice. I backed away from the Peterbilt, my eyes scanning the area. Still, nothing visible. But I could hear it. Footsteps, multiple sets, circling me. I ran back to my truck and climbed in, slamming the door. Locked it, started the engine. The temperature gauge read 32 degrees now. Exactly freezing, even though it had been 36 just a minute ago. I looked in my rearview mirror. There were shapes standing behind my truck. Tall and thin and indistinct, like they were made of mist or shadow or ice. 7 of them, 8, more appearing every second. They weren't moving, just standing there, watching. I threw the truck into gear and pulled back onto the highway, accelerating hard. The shapes didn't chase me. They just stood there, growing smaller in my mirror until I couldn't see them anymore. My hands were shaking on the wheel. My breath was coming fast and shallow. The ice was real. The loop was real. And whatever had happened to the driver of that Peterbilt could happen to me. I drove for another hour in silence, too shaken to turn on the radio. The highway stayed normal. Temperature stayed above freezing. Traffic remained light but consistent. Then around 1 o'clock I saw the sign, "Rest area, 2 miles. No, not again." I sped up, watching my speedometer climb. 70, 75, 80. The sign should have been falling behind me, but it stayed exactly 2 miles ahead, no matter how fast I went. The temperature gauge dropped to 31 degrees, then 30, then 28. I was back in the loop. But this time, I was ready for it. This time, I knew what to look for, the crack, the gap in the highway where I could break through. I drove the loop, watching carefully. The sign, the crack in the shoulder, the discoloration in the asphalt. Everything exactly the same as before. Except the Peterbilt wasn't there. The spot where it should have appeared stayed empty. And that scared me more than seeing it would have. Because if the loop was changing, if it was different from last time, that meant it was adapting, learning, getting smarter. The temperature gauge read 24 degrees. I completed another loop, then another. The cold was seeping into my bones. My fingers were numb. My breath was fogging inside the cab. How many loops this time? 10? 20? I was losing count, losing track of time, losing track of myself. The CB crackled. "You came back." The distorted voice, the same one from before. "I didn't have a choice," I said. "This is my route." "Everyone has a choice. You chose to come back. Why?" I needed to know if it was real. "And now you know. Was it worth it?" I didn't answer. The voice continued. "You're not going to find the crack this time. It's moved. The ice learned from last time. It's not going to let you escape the same way twice." "Then how do I get out?" "Maybe you don't. Maybe this is where you stay. Like me. Like the others." "No. There has to be a way." "There is. But you won't like it." "Tell me." Silence, then, "You have to stop." "What? No. Stopping is how the ice wins. Stopping is how the ice wins if you give up. If you let it take you, but if you stop on your own terms, if you face it directly instead of running, sometimes it lets you go." "Sometimes?" "Sometimes. Not always. But it's the only way out that I know of now. The ice respects strength. Respects will. If you show it, you're not afraid. If you prove you won't break, it might let you pass. And if it doesn't, then you become another frozen truck on a shoulder somewhere. Another warning for the next driver. The radio went silent. I kept driving, loop after loop. The temperature gauge read 18 degrees now. I was shivering uncontrollably. My vision was starting to blur. I had to make a decision. Keep driving until I couldn't anymore, until exhaustion or hypothermia took me. Or stop. Face the ice. Take my chances. I eased off the accelerator. 60, 50, 40. The truck was slowing. The loop was still repeating. I could see the sign ahead. But I was slowing. 30, 20, 10. My truck came to a complete stop right in the middle of the highway. The temperature gauge dropped to 10 degrees. Then 5, then 0. The windows started frosting over from the inside. Ice crept across the dashboard, across the seats, across my jacket. I could hear the footsteps again. On my left, on my right, behind me, in front of me, surrounding the truck. But I didn't look, didn't try to see what was out there. Just sat with my hands on the wheel, my breath fogging, my body shaking from cold and fear. And I spoke out loud. "I'm not afraid of you. I know what you are. You're just ice, just frozen water. You can't hurt me unless I let you." The footsteps stopped. The temperature gauge dropped to -5, -10. The cold was unbearable. I was going to freeze, going to die. But I didn't move, didn't flinch. "I'm not running. I'm not giving up. If you want me, you have to take me. But I won't just hand myself over." Silence, cold, darkness creeping in at the edges of my vision. Then, slowly, the temperature gauge started to rise. 0, 5, 10. The frost on the windows started to recede. The ice on the dashboard melted. 20 degrees, 25, 30. The footsteps moved away, fading into the distance. Gone. 32 degrees, right at freezing. I looked around. The highway ahead looked different. Less uniform. More real. Like I was seeing actual asphalt instead of the ice's imitation of it. I put the truck in gear and pressed down on the accelerator. The truck moved forward. Past the sign, which now said rest area next exit instead of 2 miles. Past the crack in the shoulder, which was just a normal crack now. Nothing special. Past the discoloration, which was just a discoloration, the mile markers appeared: 156, 157, 158. Normal sequence. Real numbers. I was out. I'd faced the ice and it had let me go. I made it to Billings that night. Unloaded the next morning. Slept for 12 hours straight in a motel room with the heat cranked up to 80 degrees. When I woke up, I called dispatch and quit. Just like that. No explanation. No notice. Just, I quit. Effective immediately. Rita tried to convince me to stay. Offered me better routes, better pay. But I was done. Done with trucking. Done with highways. Done with the ice. I got a job in a warehouse. Local work. Home every night. Safe. Boring. Exactly what I needed. But I couldn't stop thinking about the loop, about the ice, about the voice on the radio. 2 weeks after I quit, I drove back to I-29. Not in a truck this time. Just my car. I wanted to see mile marker 147 in daylight. See if there was anything unusual about that section of highway. I found the marker easily. It was just a normal mile marker on a normal highway. Nothing special about it. But when I got out of my car and walked over to the shoulder, I found something. There was a historical marker there. Old and weathered. I'd driven past it 100 times without noticing. It read, "On this site in February 1956, 17 truck drivers died in a sudden ice storm. A freak weather event caused temperatures to drop from 40 degrees to below zero in minutes. Black ice formed on the highway without warning. Vehicles lost control and collided." The storm ended as quickly as it began, leaving investigators puzzled about the cause. This marker honors those who lost their lives. February 1956. 70 years ago. 17 drivers. Trapped on the highway when the ice came. Dead before they could understand what was happening. And according to the marker, the storm ended as quickly as it began. Like it hadn't been a natural weather event at all. Like something else had caused it. Like the ice had been learning. Testing. Figuring out how to trap drivers without needing actual weather conditions. I walked back to my car and sat there for a long time, thinking. The voice on the radio had said dozens of drivers were trapped in the loop. Maybe hundreds. And it had been happening for years, decades. All those drivers, all those lives, consumed by the ice. I should have left then. Should have driven away and never looked back. But I remembered something the voice had said. Some drivers have broken through. I've heard them fade away on the CB. Some drivers had escaped, which meant the ice wasn't all-powerful, wasn't inescapable, which meant there might be a way to free the others. I called Officer Hernandez, the state trooper who'd investigated the I-80 incidents. I didn't know if he'd believe me, but I had to try. He listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're the third driver who's told me about mile marker 147. The other two disappeared a week after they called me. I never found them. What happened to them? I don't know, but I think they went back, tried to help the others, and the ice took them. Why? Because the ice doesn't want to let go. Every driver it has is energy, life, warmth. It's not going to give that up easily. And if drivers start figuring out how to escape, if they start helping each other, the ice loses its power. So what do we do? We? You mean you're planning to go back? Someone has to. Jake, listen to me. I've been investigating these incidents for years. I've lost good people trying to understand what the ice is and how to fight it. The best advice I can give you is to stay away. Don't drive that highway. Don't go near mile marker 147. Just live your life and be grateful you got out. But the others are gone. They've been gone for years, decades. They're not suffering, they're not conscious. They're just part of the ice now. Trying to save them will only add you to their number. He hung up. I sat in my car, watching the traffic go by on I-29. Normal trucks, normal drivers, none of them knowing they were passing the entrance to a loop that existed between miles. A trap that had been claiming drivers for 70 years. I should have listened to Hernandez, should have driven away and never come back. But I didn't, because I'd heard the voice on the radio. I'd heard the fear and the loneliness and the desperate hope that someone, someday, would figure out how to break the loop permanently. And maybe I couldn't free all of them. Maybe most of them were too far gone, too integrated into the ice to ever be separate again. But maybe I could free one, just one, and maybe that would be enough. I started my car and drove away from mile marker 147. But I'd be back. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Because black ice never cracks. But that doesn't mean it can't be broken.